Chapter 1663. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is unbelievable. Behind the central Grand Lecture Hall, on the lawn between the medical department and the Faculty of Law, which was also the venue of the night meeting, Charlot was swinging her dazzling blonde hair as she kicked the flagstone angrily. He actually ran away from the start and didn't come back until the end. That guy, what does he think the night gathering is? Calm down, Charles. No matter what, Wu Yan is ranked 4th. Who knows how long it will take for him to go on stage? There's no need for him to stay here on the first night, right? Sigmund, who was perched on Charlotte's shoulder, spoke in a calm voice. Although it's a pity that you can't be with him. No. No. The anger on Charlotte's pretty face immediately turned into panic. And no, I don't have any regrets. Is that so? Sigmund shook his head. If that's the case, why are you still so angry? I just. Charlotte was at a loss for words. After mumbling for a long time, she tapped her palm. Yes, I'm just dissatisfied with his attitude. Since we're going to participate in the night gathering, we have to focus and observe every battle to collect information, right? Sigh. Sigh. Sigmund sighed dumbfounded. But, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if I'm wrong. Wu Yan said he wouldn't participate in the night gathering, right? But. Charlotte stammered. In the end, he still has to go on stage, right? Then he has to do his homework, right? You're still as dishonest as ever. You're so annoying. Be careful, or I'll change your chicken for fish feed tomorrow. Charlotte snorted and turned her head away. Oh. It's fine if Master is like this. He even left after watching half of the automaton. How infuriating. Calm down, Charles. Although I know that you're used to Wu Yan's presence, you're feeling a little lonely now. I told you to shut up. At the side. A mocking voice rang out. If others were to find out that Tyrant Rex of the 13 had once lost his temper in the audience, I'd be surprised if they found out that Tyrant Rex of the 13 had once lost his temper in the audience. From tomorrow onwards, no one will dare to come up to the night gathering, right? Upon hearing this voice, Charlotte's mood worsened. With Yaya, who was wearing a short black kimono, Raisin stood beside Charlotte casually. He had a condescending smile on his face. Look. The dean is going to come for a second inspection of the night gathering, but all of you are scared. But those students were all scared away by you. The dean will cry if he sees that. Are you an idiot? Charlotte glared at Lei Zhen with a murderous look. Do you think you're tired of living? Second to last, color condominium last. Hey, don't say that. Lei Zhen said shamelessly. I'm here because I saw a girl. That's why I'm here, is? Hey. Yaya, who was standing next to Lei Zhen, glared at him. Immediately, she grabbed Lei Zhen's neck and shook him violently. Raisin. Didn't you say you're here to get information about the sound suppression technique? What do you mean by comforting a girl? You idiot. Lei Zhen's eyes rolled back as he was pinched. At the same time, he shouted in exasperation. Can't you tell that this is the opening statement of a roundabout policy? So that's how it is. You're here for information. Charlotte crossed her arms and looked at Lei Zhen coldly. Not only are you a thick-skinned idiot who plays with the automaton, but you're also a scumbag who does not hesitate to use the feelings of a young girl to achieve your goal. Why are you still alive here? Why don't you die? Why are you still standing in front of me? Raisin opened his mouth. His eyes were filled with remorse. Of course, he didn't open his mouth to speak. It was a subconscious action of being choked to the point of suffocation. The regret in his eyes wasn't because his scheme had been seen through, but because he regretted saying such perverted words in front of the idiotic automaton. If you want to obtain information, wouldn't it be faster to find the person himself? Sigmund, who was lying on Charlotte's shoulder, lifted his dragon head and said, Look, they're walking over. Hearing those words, everyone turned their heads to look at the entrance of the spectator seating area. There, Flay rode on Ruby's back. With Ruby's back, they arrived before Charlotte and the others. That. Flay looked around and asked in a weak voice. Wu Yan, is he not here? That idiot? Charlotte curled her lips. He left right from the start. He left? Flay was startled. Then, she lowered her head in disappointment. Your strength has increased quite a bit. Charlotte shifted her line of sight to Flay. You were extremely weak in the past. Weak, extremely weak. Flay received a huge blow. She began to mutter the words extremely weak. Your automaton is truly outstanding. With great difficulty, Raisin managed to break free from Yaya's choking technique before entering the three-way river. He held his neck and coughed a few times. Then, he looked at the 5 dog-shaped automatons beside Flay. If it was only one, it would be easy to deal with. Never did I expect that it would be so difficult to deal with so many of them working together. I was nearly killed by them. That was all thanks to everyone's efforts. Flay said shyly. I was only in charge of providing magic power and giving orders. That's still a huge improvement compared to before. Charlotte patted Flay's back forcefully. Flay, you have to keep up the good work. Tomorrow night, you have to use the cannonball formed by the sound pressure manipulation to crush the second to last. Actually, you don't have to be so violent. Raisin put on a fake smile. Besides, I didn't offend you, did I? If you had offended me, you would have been blasted into pieces by me. Charlotte turned her head away in disdain. No matter what, tonight's first battle ended in a draw with this pervert withdrawing. I will come back to watch tomorrow's battle. That's all. After saying those words, Charlotte put on her black gown. Are you leaving? Flay asked in confusion. Later, the academy head will come for a second inspection. Are you not going to continue watching? It's only an inspection. What's there to watch? Charlotte did not think much of it. She cast a glance at Raisin. Her gaze turned ferocious. I'm warning you. Flay is very innocent. If you want to use your flowery words to deceive information from her, there is no need for me to do anything. Sword Emperor Loki will definitely dismember you. Yes, yes, yes. Raisin agreed helplessly. While they were talking, a commotion below the arena entered everyone's ears. Everyone looked toward the direction of the commotion. They saw a group of guards below the stage. A middle-aged man with a tall and sturdy body, dark skin, beard, and gorgeous clothes walked in from outside the stage. It's the academy head. Ye spoke in surprise. Could it be that the second inspection has begun? Tisk. Charlotte was speechless. He truly came at the wrong time. Elder sister. Suddenly, a shout reverberated from the other side of the spectators' stand. Hearing this voice, Charlotte's body trembled violently. She quickly turned her head around and looked over. Then, she covered her mouth with an expression of disbelief. Anli? Dressed in uniform and wearing a beret, Angeliette panted heavily as she ran towards Charlotte from the other side of the auditorium. Anli? Sigmund raised his head with great effort. His eyes were wide open. What's wrong? Raisin asked in confusion. Is it someone you know? Anli. Anli. Charlotte muttered a few times as if she was sleep-talking. Her delicate body was trembling in excitement. It's Anli. It's really Anli. Unfortunately, Anli did not give Charlotte the opportunity to express her feelings for their reunion. She screamed, Lady Big Sister. Please stop Mr. Wu Yan. Wu Yan? Charlotte, Sigmund, Flay, Raisin, Ye, and the others were all stunned. In the next moment, a crystal-like radiance covered everyone's field of vision. Chapter 1664. 5 minutes ago, about 30 minutes had passed since the end of the night gathering. However, at that night meeting battlefield, the crowd was still as lively as it had been at the beginning. Perhaps in the coming days, the enthusiasm of the students who had nothing to do with that night party would gradually decrease, and it would not be as noisy as it was today. But that was after today. At the very least, the students' enthusiasm was still more or less maintained at the opening of the night assembly that was held once every 4 years. Even though the first battle ended in a draw, or rather, it could be said that both players had won, that a night party was still not over yet. Every year, that a night party would be held at 6:00 sharp. It would start at midnight and end the next day at 12 o'clock sharp. Before the clock struck 12:00 in the morning, even if the battle had ended, the night party would not be considered as over. Therefore, even though there were no more battles on the battlefield of the night assembly, there were still all kinds of stalls around the auditorium. The salespeople were also holding the goods in their hands as they walked around and shouted. The students didn't leave the auditorium either. They were all immersed in it, as if they were celebrating a festival. It was very lively. After a while, the principal would also come to the battleground for a second inspection. He would check all the facilities, equipment, and measures that supported the night gathering to see if there were any mistakes so that the night gathering could continue to be held successfully. Under such circumstances, the students also had the idea of watching the show, so they decided to stay here. In any case, there was a good show to watch and delicious food to sell, so why not? Such a bustling scene also caused the entire night gathering battlefield to reverberate with endless noise. No one noticed that at a certain moment, a few figures had appeared silently in the air above the battlefield of the night gathering. It floated in the air. Wah! Nagisa held Cannon's hand tightly. He wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he stepped on the air with curiosity. Clang! 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 It sounded like someone was knocking on glass. Similar to standing on the ground, the foundation gate on Itagami Island seems to have something similar. The floor was made of transparent glass. He stood on top of it. It was the same as floating in the air. Was this the same principle? Nisha-chan. Cannon gently tugged at Nagisa's hand when she saw the curious expression on Nagisa's face. This is different, right now, you're just standing in the space. Natsuki's emotionless voice sounded. I've created a solid foothold in this space. You can think of it as a flat space in the middle of a square space, and you can just stand on it. This looks fun. Astria flapped her wings and tapped on the air beside Cannon and Nagisa. When she felt her feet touch the ground, she removed her wings and stood on it. Wow! He was really standing in the air. Ikaro-senpai. Come here quickly. Ikaros nodded silently and flew over to Astria's side. Instantly, the girls lined up in a row and stood in the void. Wu Yan stood in front of the group of girls as he looked down at them from a high vantage point. After a while, when the dean appears, Wu Yan will attack him. When that happens, the crime of attacking the dean will fall on Wu Yan's head. In the autonomous Valpurgis Royal Tactical Academy, such a crime was punishable by capital punishment. In other words, the moment he attacks, the entire academy will become Wu Yan's enemy. Naturally, it would no longer be possible for them to continue to attend classes in the academy, return to their dorms in the ordinary way, eat in the student cafeteria in the ordinary way, and sleep in the ordinary way. It was a serious matter, but Wu Yan didn't think of other ways to solve it. That's because Wu Yan didn't think it was that bad. The replication of Eve's heart is nearing completion. Their goal of coming to this world is more or less complete. When that time comes, there's no need for them to stay in the academy. Therefore, Wu Yan didn't want to think of other ways to save Aliette just to stay in the academy. Rather, before he completes his mission, he might as well play with that so-called night meeting executive department head for a bit. That's not a bad idea. At least, that's how it is for now. Oniai-chan. Nagisa and Cannon looked at Wu Yan anxiously. Master. Ikaros and Astria couldn't help but call out to him softly. Actually, with our means, it's easy to come up with other solutions. Natsuki said helplessly. Why do you want to play so big? That's why I said from the start, since he wants to play, I'll play with him. Wu Yan looked down as he replied. It's not a bad idea to use this opportunity to see what the strongest magician of the 19th century is capable of. If he can't even survive our attacks, then so be it. You don't look like someone who would say something like that. Natsuki looked at Wu Yan thoughtfully. Could it be that you know something else? I'm just thinking that the other party might be thinking the same thing as us, thinking that we can't kill the dean. Wu Yan chuckled. It's an enigmatic laugh. If we really do kill the dean, what do you think he'll do if he has anything to do with that annoying bastard? You. Natsuki shifted her gaze away in dissatisfaction. Since when did you become so evil? Let's do the same. Wu Yan shrugged. Wu Yan shrugged. The only way to deal with evil people is to use the same evil method. After that, Wu Yan waved his hand to stop Natsuki and the girls who were about to say something. Alright, it seems like the main character is here. Upon hearing that, the group of girls lowered their heads and looked down. Then, the scene of the dean being escorted by a group of guards and entering the battlefield during the night fell into the eyes of the group of girls. Natsuki let out a sigh. I didn't think I'd become a criminal one day. It's not a bad idea to change things up once in a while. Wu Yan chuckled and turned to Ikaros. Ikaros, I'll be the one to attack. I'll leave this to you. Yes. Master. An illusory square frame appeared in Ikaros's eyes. Her eyes quickly turned crimson red, changing her pure and holy temperament. She was cold and beautiful at the same time. At the same time, Wu Yan raised his hand. A crimson spatial ripple spread out from his hand. Not long after, a beautiful bow that was completely black but transparent like crystal slowly emerged from the crimson space ripples. Big sister. Angelique ignored the fact that she was gasping for breath and ran toward Charlotte while shouting. Please stop, Mr. Wu Yan. Wu Yan. Charlotte, who was excited to see her little sister she hadn't seen for many years, was stunned. It wasn't only Charlotte. Flay, Raisin, Yaya and the others were also stunned. Stop Wu Yan. Stop him for what? Bzzz. Just as this question appeared in their minds, everyone present, including Charlotte, Flay, Raisin, Yaya, Sigmund and the others, suddenly saw a crystal-like radiance flash before their eyes. In the light, pale blue translucent barriers made of crystals rose like walls around the battlefield of the Night Assembly, forming a wall that surrounded the entire battlefield of the Night Assembly. Inside the walls formed by the light blue translucent barriers, the students present were all covered by a spherical barrier. This included Charlot, Flay, and Juliet, who had just run into the arena, Raisin, and Ye. This is... Charlotte, who was incomparably familiar with this barrier, cried out in alarm. Isn't this the magic barrier formed by Ikaros's ripple barrier? What's wrong? Flay spoke in a somewhat fearful manner. What happened? Raisin raised his head and looked to the sky. His pupils shrunk. Above. Everyone present who heard the voice raised their heads and looked to the sky. Soon after, everyone saw what was happening. In the sky, a figure pulled open a beautiful bow. On the bow, an arrow that looked like a shooting star gradually condensed into form. Chapter 1665. Wang. In the air, the space seemed to be trembling. Specks of starlight appeared out of thin air from all directions and turned into streams of light that converged towards the same direction. And the place where they gathered was an extremely dazzling arrow that was knocked on a gorgeous bow. On the ground, the students, professors, and guards of Walpurgis Wangli Tactical Academy all looked up at the scene that looked like a meteor shower converging in one direction. They were slightly dazed at first, and then each and every one of them was at a loss. What is that? Lei Zhen's voice trembled as he realized how strange the situation was. What the hell is going on? Charlotte couldn't care less about her sister who she hadn't seen for years. Her eyes were filled with emotions as she stared at the figure holding the bow and condensing the meteor-like arrow. Charlotte couldn't be more familiar with that figure. Even under the cover of the night, she could still recognize it. Not to mention, behind that figure, there was a line of young girls of different sizes who were equally beautiful, just like a symbol of the world. In the entire Valpurgis Royal Tactical Academy, there was only one person who brought along 5 girls of different sizes who were all equally beautiful. Wu Yan. Charlotte's voice was hoarse. Is it him? What is he trying to do? Sigmund's calm voice carried a hint of uneasiness. I have a bad feeling about this. Sigmund wasn't the only one who had a bad feeling about this. But no matter how bad the feeling was, no one dared to do anything. It wasn't that they didn't want to, but there was an aegis, absolute defense circle, around them, trapping them inside. What the hell is this? Damn it. I can't open it. Let us out. Let us out. Perhaps the uneasiness in everyone's heart had turned into an atmosphere that spread to everyone present. Not long after, many people began to hit the aegis that trapped them in panic and began to yell, causing a commotion. Only Charlotte and Lei Zhen were staring at the figure in the sky with his bow and arrow knocked. Then, they suddenly remembered. Holding the bow? Why is he holding the bow? Who was he aiming at with this bow and arrow? With this thought in mind, the ominous feeling in their hearts grew even stronger. They forcefully turned their heads and looked in the direction of the arrow that was gradually forming in the sky. In the next moment, Charlotte and Lei Zhen's expressions changed drastically. Because in the direction the arrow was pointing at, in the middle of the battlefield of the night gathering, stood a figure who did not fit in with the surroundings at first glance. Why is he so out of tune with the surroundings? The reason was simple. The aegis, absolute defense circle, defensive barrier formed a wall around the battlefield of the night assembly, encircling the entire battlefield. Inside the walls formed by the aegis, the students, professors, and guards were also surrounded by a spherical aegis, trapping them firmly inside. However, in the direction the arrow was pointing at, there was no aegis around the figure standing in the center of the battlefield of the night assembly. Out of everyone present, he was the only one who was safe and sound. No. That should be the case. He was the only one not protected by the aegis. That person was none other than the Academy Dean. Could it be? Charlotte's voice finally started to tremble. Yen, is he planning to attack the Academy Dean? How could that be? Lei Zhen and Ye said those words at practically the same time. However, all of them had forced smiles on their faces. Big sister. Big sister. Not far away, Mariette, who was also trapped in the aegis, shouted at the top of her lungs. Quickly, stop Mr. Wu Yan. At this moment, everyone understood what was going on. Wu Yan was indeed planning to attack the Academy Dean. It was because Angeliette knew this that she said the words that made Charlotte stop Wu Yan from speaking. Understanding this point, Charlotte's pretty face turned ghastly pale in an instant. With some shock, she let out a sorrowful cry. Stop. However, it was already too late. In the sky, the starlight that converged on the arrow flickered and disappeared into thin air. Aiming the fully formed meteor shower arrow at the only figure not enveloped by the aegis, Wu Yan's wine-red eyes glinted with a deadly cold glint. Soon after, he released his hand without hesitation. Swish! Like a stream of light streaking across the sky, the arrow formed by starlight bloomed in mid-air, rubbing against the atmosphere. Amidst the sound of breaking through the air, it brought along a sky full of starlight and fell down like a comet falling to the earth. Everyone present only saw a bright flowing light flash past their eyes, as if it had cut the space in front of them into 2 halves. In just a moment, in the blink of an eye, it descended from the sky and landed on the headmaster, who was completely defenseless. Then, everyone's eyes were once again filled with dazzling flashes of light. Boom! As a thunderous sound resounded through the sky, everyone's mind went blank for a short while due to the shock of this loud sound. A strong gust of wind blew out like an explosion, causing the ground to crack inch by inch. The spectator seats were also smashed into pieces. Debris flew out from the impact like a gust of wind, shooting in all directions like bullets. Ah! The students, professors, and guards who were in the protective barrier of the Aegis were unharmed. However, their bodies were blown away by the strong gales along with the Aegis, smashing into the surrounding ground in a mess. In an instant, the entire night assembly was like an erupting volcano. In an instant, the temperature soared. Although there was almost no substantial damage, screams, and screams reverberated in the arena one after another, making the scene seem like hell with wails everywhere. When the strong gales dispersed, the deafening explosions in the air were extinguished. After everything calmed down, all the Aegis in the surroundings seemed to have shattered and dissipated. One by one, the people who had fallen to the ground raised their heads and looked around with lingering fear. Then, their faces were filled with fear. There was no other reason. It was because the battlefield of the night assembly had completely disappeared. What replaced it was an enormous crater that seemed like a meteorite had crashed into the ground. Smoke, dust, and sparks filled the entire place. Everyone present was lying in every corner of the crater. Their panicked cries caused the entire place to be in chaos. Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, Ye, Sigmund, and the others who stood up from the ground were tightly clenching their fists. Their faces were covered with sweat. They had already discovered who the target of this attack was, and they had all discovered it. The headmaster had disappeared. Wu Yan. Flay muttered with a trembling expression. Killed the headmaster? That guy. Lei Zhen's complexion turned ashen. What exactly is he thinking? Charlot bit her lips and slowly raised her head. She looked at the figure holding the gorgeous black bow floating in front of the 5 young girls. She couldn't help but shout. Why? Perhaps because he heard Charlot's voice, Wu Yan lowered his eyes and took a glance at Charlot who was on the ground. However, it was as if he had seen a stranger. In less than a second, he retrieved his gaze. Natsuki. Natsuki replied and raised her hand. She gently pointed the lace fan in her hand at the empty space before her. With the tip of the fan as the source, spatial ripples began to appear in the air. The spatial ripples completely covered Wu Yan and the group of young girls. The group of people immediately became illusory and dreamlike. It was like a mirage. Not long after, they disappeared together with the spatial ripples. On the ground, in the enormous crater, everything was in chaos. Chapter 1666. Behind the central lecture hall of the Walpurgis Royal Mechanical Engineering Academy, the lawn between the medical department and the law department was used as the venue for the night meeting. In just one night, it had turned into a huge crater. The students, professors, and guards who were originally present stood up from the ground in a wretched manner. They looked around the scene as though they had yet to react to the sudden situation. Fear and bewilderment could be seen on their faces. Under such circumstances, the entire place was strangely silent. It was only after a while that the people who were the first to react to the situation gradually caused a commotion, causing the entire place to be in chaos. Standing at the edge of the giant pit, Charlot brought along Sigmund, Flay brought along the 5 automaton from the Garm series, and Lei Zhen brought along Yaya. The group of people looked at the chaotic scene in front of them and were rendered speechless for a long time. At this moment, there was only one question in everyone's heart. Why? Why would Wu Yan attack the dean? Why would things suddenly turn out like this? Only. Charlot suddenly spoke. She walked up to Onli who had her head lowered. Her expression could not be seen clearly at all. With trembling hands, she grabbed Onli's slender shoulders. Did you just ask me to stop him? Do you know why he would do such a thing? Am I right? Sister. My lady. Onli raised her head and looked at her beautiful, strong, and powerful sister who was better than her in every aspect. Her face was pale and her eyes were filled with helplessness. Her heart was twisted in pain as though it was being cut by a knife. Tell me. Onli. Charlot's voice was almost muffled. The words that came out of her mouth were blurry and hoarse. What do you know? Calm down, Seal. Sigmund spoke in a deep voice. If you continue like this, even if Onli knows something, she will still be frightened by you. They will also be scared speechless by you. But. Charlot looked at the huge crater in front of her. She smiled miserably as she looked at the chaotic scene inside. That guy killed the head of the academy. Sigmund became silent. Even Flay, Lei Zhen, Yaya, and the others became silent. The Walpurgis Royal Magic Academy was the best academy in the world of magic. It was an important organization that sent outstanding puppet users to various countries all over the world, cultivated powerful puppet users, and strengthened the national strength of each country. Because of this, the Walpurgis Royal Tactical Academy had autonomy. Everything within the walls of the Walpurgis Royal Tactical Academy was like a small country, managed by the higher-ups. And standing at the top of this small country, the Dean, Edward Rutherford. Killing the Dean was the same crime as killing the leader of a country. Therefore, once Wu Yan was convicted of assassinating the Dean, he would be sentenced to death by the Academy. Not only that, but they would also be sending outstanding puppet operators to various countries all over the world. The leader of an important organization that nurtured powerful puppet users and strengthened the national strength of each country was killed. The various countries and powers outside the Academy could also hunt down Wu Yan and treat him as a criminal. In other words, Wu Yan would most likely become a street rat that no one in this world could tolerate. And just now, almost all the witnesses who saw Wu Yan draw his bow and kill the Dean were witnesses. In other words, what awaited Wu Yan would be the Academy's guards, the discipline committee, and even the professors and students forming their own teams to hunt him down. Knowing this clearly, Lei Zhen and Yaya, who were more or less related to Wu Yan, had gloomy expressions. Flay even covered her mouth and tears flowed down from her eyes. Charlotte did not show any expression. She only lowered her head and did not say anything. However, Angelique, who was held by Charlotte's shoulder, and Sigmund, who was standing on Charlotte's shoulder, could both feel it. Charlotte's body was trembling. It had to be said that fate really played tricks on people. In the past, Count Bilo's family was a famous family in England. They were nobles who were bestowed with a unicorn emblem and northern territory by Her Majesty the Queen. However, due to an extremely noble child who was a guest at Count Bilo's house, he was bitten by one of Charlotte's dog-shaped automaton. Count Bilo's family was punished by the royal family. First, Count Bileo's title was taken away, and his family's territory was taken back. Then, the automaton that was once like a family was dismantled, and even their assets were frozen. Due to his assets being frozen, Count Bilo's family was in a difficult situation. Count Bilo was viewed as a common enemy by the English because of this. He could not find a job in England and could only go to France alone. However, in France, Count Bilo's job did not seem to be going well. Not long after, Count Bilo lost contact and there was no more news of him. When Charlotte was still in school, her mother and younger sister also mysteriously disappeared. In a situation where she had no one to rely on, as a child, Charlotte's tuition fees were soon exhausted and she was kicked out of the boarding school. She truly fell into a situation where she had nothing. Fortunately, Charlotte still had an outstanding talent in puppeteering. She also had Sigmund, who was passed down from generation to generation in Count Bilo's family, who carried the magic that contained the truth of the universe and the magic circuit that carried the magic sword. No matter what the situation outside was, the Walpurgis Royal Mechanic Academy only paid attention to puppeteers with extraordinary strength. It was a complete power doctrine. It did not matter if the other party was the child of a felon or not, as long as they had strength, they would be accepted. Therefore, Charlotte received a scholarship from the Walpurgis Royal Mechanic Academy and entered the Walpurgis Royal Mechanic Academy to study. Therefore, from the moment she entered the academy and had a glimmer of hope, Charlotte's dream began. She wanted to find her parents, find her sister, and find the hearts of the automaton that was once her family. She wanted to return to the past and live happily together. It was because of this reason that Charlotte was so obsessed with the night meeting. She wanted to ascend to the throne of the Demon King, and regain the reputation of Count Bilo's family. She wanted to obtain enough wealth to revive Count Bilo's family and return everything to its original state. It was because of this that Charlotte alienated all the people in the academy who could become her enemies and walked down the path alone. God was not unkind to Charlotte. In the end, he still gave Charlotte an existence that she could confide in so that she would not be alone in the academy. But now, her missing younger sister had once again appeared in front of Charlotte. However, the only person who had saved Charlotte, comforted her soul, and was the only person she could open her heart to, had almost embarked on a path that would leave her forever. How could Charlotte, who looked strong on the outside but was weak on the inside, endure this? Unable to bear to see Charlotte like this, Sigmund turned his head away and looked towards the center of the crater. When he saw the scene there, Sigmund's eyes shined and he cried out, "Charles! Look over there!" Hearing Sigmund's voice, everyone was startled and they all looked over. Soon after, the eyes of the group of people lit up. They saw that in the center of the empty crater, several figures suddenly appeared. They were 6 young girls who were as beautiful as flowers. They were dressed in black and had curtains hanging in front of their faces. Behind the 6 girls, there were 2 other people. One of them was a man wearing a silver mask and a luxurious cloak. The other was a middle-aged man with dark skin and a tall and sturdy body. He was as strong as a soldier. The former was Magnus. The latter was the dean who should have died. The dean didn't die? Flay cried out in pleasant surprise. Magnus. Lei Zhen's expression turned serious. So that's the case. Magnus protected the dean? Charlotte's spirit was immediately shaken. The gloominess on her face was swept away. The dean didn't die. In that case, there was still room for redemption. I didn't think that things would develop to this point. Right at this moment, a cold and elegant voice sounded from behind Charlotte's group. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice. Kimberly's figure was imprinted in everyone's eyes. The eyes hidden behind the spectacles turned to look at Kimberly. Kimberly lightly snorted and turned around. "The few of you, come with me." After saying that, Kimberly left without hesitation, without giving anyone a chance to object. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They could only follow her. Chapter 1667. Walpurgis Royal Mecha Academy, Central Great Hall, bringing Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon with him, Wu Yan passed through the lobby of the first floor. They went up the stairs and arrived at the 3rd floor. Walking down a quiet corridor, they arrived at a door under the dim illumination of the lights. Squeak. Almost at the same time, the door opened by itself. A man wearing a deacon's suit, colored glasses on his face, and short silver hair that leaned toward white held the door handle. As he opened the door, he stood inside the door expressionlessly. However, there was a trace of uncontrollable vigilance in his eyes. This sense of vigilance isn't just directed at Wu Yan, it's also directed at the 5 girls standing behind Wu Yan. They're wearing white with red edges and a red pleated skirt. They look like a squad. Only Nagisa, Kanon, and Astria glanced at Shinobu. Wu Yan, Natsuki, and Ikaros didn't even look at Shinobu. Instead, they focused on the other side of the door. "Ah, it's been hard on you, Scarlet Eyes." The elegant young man stood by the window at the very front. He turned around with a smile that seemed both joyful and excited as he exclaimed in amazement. That arrow just now was just too shocking. Its destructive power was even higher than Tyrantrex's demonic sword. What exactly is that bow? Is it some kind of magic equipment with a magic circuit? What kind of magic circuit could it be? A few of them seemed to be curious. She threw out a question that sounded like an interrogation, but Wu Yan didn't have any intention of answering. He just led the girls inside. Natsuki, Nagisa, and Kanon followed behind Wu Yan while sizing up the annoying grin on the young man's face. They had their own thoughts about it. Natsuki, Nagisa, and Kanon did not come here with Wu Yan last time. Even though they knew someone was trying to use Wu Yan, they did not know what the person looked like. However, the 3 girls had different thoughts when they first saw the young man. They did not share the same thoughts. Nagisa felt the same way. The young man might be handsome with a charming smile, but no matter how you looked at him, it made one's hair stand on end. Canon felt the same way. She felt the same way about the young man. Apart from his noble temperament, he also had a dark and eerie presence like a poisonous snake. Natsuki squinted her eyes. As he looked at the young man, an interesting smile appeared on his face at some point. While Natsuki, Nagisa, and Canon were observing the young man was also looking at the three girls. Looking at the young and calm Natsuki, the bright and cute Nagisa, and the pure and holy Canon, the young man looked like he was admiring a work of art. He kept praising them. It's really beautiful. It doesn't pale in comparison to Magnus' squadron at all. Or rather, in terms of appearance, your automaton is more attractive. I wonder if it can compare to Magnus in terms of performance? Once again, Wu Yan chose to ignore the boy's inexplicable remark. Masayuki, who was standing by the door, was extremely displeased, but she couldn't do anything about it. Last time, when he faced Wu Yan, he only used an automaton to threaten the person Shinobi had sworn to protect. And now, all 5 of the other party's automaton were present. Even if their performance couldn't be compared to the angelic girl who had placed the laser sword on the neck of the true lord rank, they definitely wouldn't be any worse. Shinobi didn't have the confidence to deal with 5 of them alone. Thus, no matter how unhappy Shinobi was, he could only endure it. Compared to Shinobi, the young man didn't seem to care at all. He shrugged and looked out the window with a smile. Looks like your target is still alive and well. Wu Yan's eyes flashed for a split second before he walked over to the window and looked out of it. This was the 3rd floor of the central lecture hall. The venue of the night meeting was behind the central lecture hall. It was on the lawn between the medical department and the law department. From the window on the 3rd floor of the central lecture hall, one could clearly see the situation of the night meeting. Of course, that place was now replaced by a huge crater. Wu Yan can see the guards forming a cordon around the huge crater. They are chasing the students out of the crater. The discipline and discipline committee members are assisting the guards in collecting the evidence of the students who are present. Other than the guards and disciplinary committee members, even the professors were chased out of the crater. There were only 2 people left in the crater. They weren't the guards or disciplinary committee members. Magnus, who was wearing a silver mask and a black cloak that looked like a battle robe. The dean of the academy, who should have been annihilated by the arrow of the meteor knight, could not be any more dead. At this moment, the principal was conversing with Magnus, who was leading his squadron. It seemed that they were discussing something. The dean's back was facing the central lecture hall, so Wu Yan and the other 2 couldn't see the dean's expression clearly. Magnus, on the other hand, is wearing an ice cube face and a mask. From the surface, it's impossible to tell what the 2 of them are discussing. However, Wu Yan and the young man could guess what they were talking about just by guessing. Looks like in order to prevent himself from being ambushed by some inexplicable people again, the cautious Sir Dean is planning to let the number 1 in the academy, Marshall, who is currently the closest to the Demon King, be his guard to protect his safety. As if he had seen a happy scene, the young man smiled happily. Next, if you want to kill the dean, you'll have to face that monster. Wu Yan looked at the young man. This was the first time he spoke since he entered the executive department. You're scared of Magnus? Scared? Scared? How can I not be scared? Although he said that, the young man didn't seem to care at all. Magnus' squadron is a super powerful automaton that can fight against 13 people. Even if they really go up against them, they won't be able to do anything, right? Lucian thought to himself. Magnus' squadron is a super powerful automaton that can fight against 13 people. Yes. The young man turned around and looked at Wu Yan. Of course, if the complete control vibration is at the level you mentioned last time, I won't be scared no matter how many of them come. This sentence clearly exposed the fact that the young man still cared about the vector manipulation Wu Yan mentioned last time. Wu Yan looked at the young man with a faint smile. He wanted to let the young man know that Wu Yan wouldn't reveal anything. Then, what do you plan to do next? The young man curled his lips in boredom. If you don't kill the dean, even if I don't do it, the Granville family will still have their eyes on Angelique. By then, unless you guys stay by her side 24/7, Angelique will not be able to resist without any power. In the face of such an obvious threat, Wu Yan's expression didn't change from start to finish. Instead, he looked at the boy with pity in his eyes, causing the boy to retract his smile. Without waiting for the young man to say anything, Wu Yan turned around and walked outside. You're being hunted. The young man kindly reminded. I have a way to hide my identity, don't you need me to help you? Wu Yan stopped in his tracks. He turned around and taunted her. Do you think everyone is as shameful as you are? With that, Wu Yan led the girls out of the executive department's meeting hall without looking back. It wasn't until Wu Yan left that the young man's expression finally turned gloomy. Young master? Zhen asked with a gloomy expression. Could it be that he has already seen through me? The young man was silent for a while before smiling. Anyway, judging from his attitude, he'll still play with us, right? Hearing this, his heart trembled slightly. In his master's heart, that person changed from a flag to a player? Chapter 1668. Kimberly was sitting on a rather luxurious chair in the middle of the room filled with bookshelves and books. She closed her eyes and tapped her fingers on the armrest, letting the sound echo in the air. Yaya was making tea beside her, but it was obvious that she was absent-minded. Charlotte, on the other hand, was holding Angelette's hand and standing in front of Kimberly with Flay and Raisin. They were all silent as they waited for Kimberly to speak. Sigmund was standing on the back of one of the Garm series automatons. He was standing in the corner of the room with 5 other Garm series automatons. This scene was maintained for a full 10 to 20 minutes, but there was not a single person who spoke, causing the surrounding atmosphere to be filled with a strange sense of heaviness. Perhaps Wu Yan's attack on the dean had a huge impact on Charlotte, Flay, Raisin, and the others. At least, even the most impatient Charlotte was holding Angelette's hand and didn't say anything. If it was under normal circumstances, perhaps this indescribable silence would have been broken. Of course, the owner of the room, Kimberly, didn't intend to let the silence last for too long. A few minutes later, Kimberly opened her eyes. His somewhat cold gaze landed on Angeliette's body. Actually, I really want to capture you and interrogate you directly. Angeliette was clearly shocked by this sentence. Tears appeared in the corners of her eyes, and she couldn't help but hide behind Charlotte. Teacher Kimberly. Charlotte quickly hugged Angelette's shoulder and glared at Kimberly. This has nothing to do with Angelette, right? What nonsense are you talking about? Kimberly glanced at Charlotte. Do you really think that Angeliette had nothing to do with this matter? Charlotte opened her mouth slightly, but she couldn't refute Kimberly's words. It doesn't matter if Mariette had anything to do with Wu Yan's assassination attempt on the dean. She seems to know something. Lei Jin chimed in like he's trying to do justice to Wu Yan. After all. Before Wu Yan made his move, Angeliette had indeed arrived. Angeliette had indeed come to the scene and had Tyrant Rex stop him. This also proved that Angeliette had known beforehand that he would make a move on the headmaster, right? Correct, correct. Kimberly's voice was so calm that it was reminiscent of a machine. She said to the others. Of course. I'm curious as to why the second daughter of Count Bilao, who has been missing for many years, would suddenly appear in the academy. I'm even more suspicious about the fact that she became a student of the academy. After hearing Kimberly's words, Charlotte recalled something and spoke to Angeliette in agitation. Angeliette. Where have you been all these years? Do you know how worried I was? Where's Mom? You're together, right? Faced with Charlotte's endless questions, Angeliette looked at Charlotte with a pained expression, but she didn't say anything. She closed her eyes and lowered her head. Angeliette. Charlotte couldn't help but raise her voice when she saw that Angeliette didn't want to say anything. Deal with your family matters after this. Kimberly interrupted Charlotte's questioning with dissatisfaction as she glanced at Angeliette. I just want to know if the reason Scarlet Eyes tried to assassinate the dean has anything to do with you. And Juliet's shoulders trembled. Charlotte, who was holding her, immediately understood. Kimberly, Flay, Lei Zhen and the others also understood. Then, Flay involuntarily took a step forward. She was a little timid, but she also spoke with some hope. Wu Yan's assassination on the dean wasn't his own idea, right? Angelette still didn't answer. She only buried her head in Charlotte's arms as if she didn't want to say anything. But it was precisely because of this that it confirmed the authenticity of the sentence just now. Could it be that he was threatened by someone? Charlotte shook her head in disbelief. She said in a negative tone while shaking her head. That's impossible. He's so strong that even Magnus was once suppressed by him. When I practiced with him, even if I used all my strength, I could only barely fight against his automaton. I've never won against that one. You've never won against an automaton? Raisin was shocked. You're one of the members of the 13. Apart from Magnus, no one else would dare to say that they have a 100% chance of defeating you, right? You can't even do anything to an automaton like him? I don't want to, but it's the truth. Charlotte smiled bitterly. His strength is already at a level where he's in a different dimension from me. Just like Magnus, he doesn't give off the feeling of being the strongest. He's invincible. Indeed. Wu Yan is the same as Magnus. They're both the type that's strong enough to make others despair. Raisin was still unwilling, but he still said that. If that's the case, no one can threaten someone as powerful as him, right? That's why I said you're all brats. Kimberly mocked. No matter how strong a person is, they can't be stronger than an army. There's nothing they can't use to their advantage. Not to mention. Kimberly looked at Angelette meaningfully. The bargaining chip that can be used to threaten him is right in front of you. What do you mean? Charlotte instinctively stood in front of Angelette as though she was trying to cover up her uneasiness. She spoke loudly. Are you trying to say that Angelette is being used as a bargaining chip? I see. Compared to Charlotte, who couldn't accept it, Raisin was enlightened. If someone told Wu Yan that Angelette would die if he didn't kill the dean, then it would make sense. Wah! Charlotte sucked in a breath of cold air and shook her head frantically. Impossible. He has nothing to do with Angelette, right? Why would he kill the dean for Angelette? Mr. Wu Yan didn't kill the dean to save me. As soon as Charlotte finished speaking, Angelette couldn't hold it in any longer. She raised her head and shouted at Charlotte with a pale face. Mr. Wu Yan killed the dean for you, big sister. W for me? Charlotte was dumbfounded. It seems like the situation is clear now. Kimberly sighed. Didn't the mastermind tell Scarlet Eyes that if they don't kill the headmaster, Angelique will die? Instead, they said that if they don't kill the headmaster, Tyrantrex's sister will die? Oh, right. At this point, who wouldn't be clear? Indeed, Wu Yan wasn't blackmailed into assassinating the dean for Mariette's sake, he did it for Charlotte's sake. Because if he didn't rescue her, it might cause her death. Charlotte, who had gone through untold hardships and came to the Valpurgis Royal Tactical Academy to study in order to reunite her family and tried her best to become the Demon King, would be in so much pain that she wouldn't be able to extricate herself from it. Wu Yan, it's because he didn't want Charlotte to suffer that he went to save Angelette, who has nothing to do with him. He didn't even hesitate to be threatened and become a criminal who would be sentenced to death. How could this be? Charlotte muttered absent-mindedly as she powerlessly collapsed on the ground. So it's all my fault. Flay couldn't help but turn her head away when she saw Charlotte's absent-minded appearance. Kimberly and Lei Zhen also couldn't help but sigh. Big sister. Angelette's gaze fluctuated violently. She bit her lips. As expected, Mr. Wu Yan was a special existence to Big Sister. Lady Big Sister. In front of everyone present, Angelette squeezed out those words with a trembling voice. If you want to save Mr. Wu Yan, then kill me. Charlotte's absent-minded eyes shrunk to the size of a needle. Chapter 1669. Just kill me. His trembling voice resounded clearly in the entire room, and also clearly passed into the ears of everyone present. Flay, Kimberly, Ryzen, Ye and the others' expressions changed when they heard those words. Charlotte was even more stunned. Angelique. Beside her, Sigmund, who was standing on the back of one of the Garm series automatons, couldn't help but speak sternly. Do you know what you're saying? Angelique forced a miserable smile. I'm just speaking the truth. Do you want to use your own death to free the Scarlet Eyes from the threat of the mastermind behind the scenes? Kimberly didn't know why, but she had an angry expression on her face. You don't even know how to cherish your own life. What a foolish action. Once again, Angeliette bit her lip. She overcame her cowardice and refuted Kimberly's words. If I don't do this, how am I supposed to save Mr. Wu Yan? The mastermind behind the entire incident is using Angelique's life as a threat. That's how he managed to make Wu Yan assassinate the school dean. If the person being used as a threat were to die, the mastermind would no longer have a reason to threaten Wu Yan and Wu Yan. At least, that's what everyone here thought. Do you think that fellow will be happy if you do this? Raisin took a step forward and looked directly at Angelique. You're the person he's willing to become a criminal to save. If you're willing to give up on yourself, wouldn't everything he's done be in vain? Mr. Wu Yan didn't do it to save me. Angelique shook her head and explained with an expression as if she was about to cry. Mr. Wu Yan only saved me for my big sister. So? Kimberly sneered. You think you're dead? The Scarlet Eyes won't be threatened anymore. Furthermore, you'll be able to escape the crime of assassinating the school dean. Will your big sister be happy? Mariette's mouth opened slightly, opening and closing like a goldfish's mouth, but she couldn't say a word. Don't say any more. Anne. Charlotte, who was sitting on the ground, raised her head abruptly. His soulless expression disappeared in an instant. Instead, his face was filled with determination. He wiped his face and stood up. I won't let you die. Big sister. Angeliette said excitedly. But Mr. Wu Yan, I will bring him back. Charlotte clenched her fists. Definitely. His determination is not bad. When Charlotte made up her mind, Kimberly poured cold water on her mercilessly. However, don't you think you're oversimplifying things? Charlot, Henriette, Flay, Lei Zhen, Yaya, and the others were slightly stunned. Do you think someone who can threaten Scarlet Eyes is just some random person? Kimberly used a lecturing tone and narrowed her eyes. If he's someone you can deal with in an instant, then with Scarlet Eyes' strength, he won't compromise. You mean? Lei Zhen said uncertainly. He's stronger than Wu Yan? In this school, there's someone who dares to say he's stronger than Scarlet Eyes. Even Magnus can't say that, right? Kimberly said with admiration and coldness. Just like what Charlotte said, Scarlet Eyes and Magnus are already powerhouses of a different dimension. Although the night gathering has only just begun, in terms of strength alone, the two of them are already qualified to stand in the position of Demon King. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, but they agreed with it from the bottom of their hearts. Magnus had already broken the record in the history of the Academy, and was the super genius with the highest score in all of history. In his squadron, every automaton is the highest level existence and has the highest level of performance. Just one of them is enough to fight against 13 people. With 6 of them added together, even a real Demon King wouldn't dare to say he's stronger than him. As for Wu Yan, although his strength was short-lived, every single one of his automaton can fight against 13 people. In terms of numbers, they're not inferior to Magnus. On top of that, Wu Yan's squadron has a perfect combination of magic circuits. Attack, defense, healing, support, and long-range attacks are all taken care of. If they were to fight in a team battle, Magnus' squadron might even be weaker than Wu Yan's squadron. How could such an existence be threatened by a random person who came out of nowhere? No one dares to say they're stronger than Wu Yan? Lei Zhen pondered for a moment before he lifted his head. In other words, the opponent might not be a single person, but an entire faction? Hearing that, Charlotte, Flay, and the others were shocked. You're quite quick-witted. Kimberly nodded in praise before changing the topic. Actually, recently, there's reliable news that proves that the Kingsford family is trying their best to contact the dean in private. The Kingsford family? Charlotte tilted her head in confusion. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and her expression changed. Felix? You're saying that the one who's secretly threatening Wu Yan with Angelette's life is the Kingsford family? Lei Zhen looked at Angelette. Angelette seemed to be very afraid of Lei Zhen. She hid behind Charlotte and refused to say a word. Although it's only a guess, it's very reasonable, isn't it? Kimberly looked at everyone present. Because of what happened to Felix, the Kingsford family was attacked by the organizations that the students Felix killed belonged to, causing the Kingsford family to completely lose power in England. There were two people who made all of this happen. The one who defeated and arrested Felix is Wu Yan. Lei Zhen's gaze sharpened. And the dean who announced Felix's true identity and convicted him of his crimes. That's right. As long as the dean who convicted Felix is killed, the Kingsford family will be able to do something. Kimberly nodded. For example, there's a rumor that the political enemy of the Kingsford family roped in the dean and had the dean slander the eldest son of the Kingsford family and killed the dean, the only person who knew about it. What a ridiculous conjecture. Lei Zhen retorted bluntly. Compared to this, there must be more people who would believe that the Kingsford family sent someone to assassinate the dean in order to take revenge on him for causing the Kingsford family to lose their power, right? Perhaps you don't know this, but the Kingsford family has a very good reputation. Kimberly said. They've been doing charity work for many years, so the Kingsford family has a very high position in the hearts of the people. The public will usually side with the people they like. On top of that, Felix used to be very popular in the academy and always appeared kind and benevolent in front of others. Which one do you think the people will believe between the two public opinions? Then, Flay's expression became uncertain. If Wu Yan killed the dean, the Kingsford family will push him out to be the scapegoat. Kimberly said. As long as he's the subordinate of the political enemy of the Kingsford family who colluded with the dean to frame the eldest son of the Kingsford family and killed the dean, the Kingsford family will be able to smoothly return to the political scene. The people who are in the way will all shut up because of the public opinion. Bang! Right after Kimberly said those words, Charlotte slammed the bookshelf beside her. Her face and eyes were burning with anger. I will absolutely not let them succeed. After saying those words, Charlotte turned around and ran out of the room while holding Angelette's hand. Chase after them. Kimberly ordered Flay and Lei Zhen coldly. Don't let her do anything foolish. Flay and Lei Zhen finally reacted and hurriedly chased after them. Chapter 1670. Seal. At the same time Charlot pulled Angeliot out of the door, Flay brought the Garm series automaton, Raisin brought Yaya, and Sigmund flapped his wings and chased after them. Calm down. Seal. Sigmund landed on Charlotte's beret and spoke sternly with the words he always used to warn Charlotte. If you act so recklessly, not only will you fail to save Wu Yan, you might even lose your life. Sister. Sister. You can't go. Angelette held Charlotte's hand tightly and shook her head desperately. Even if it's sister, you're no match for them. Then do you want me to just stand by and do nothing? Charlotte screamed with a face full of agitation. He's in this state because of me and the mastermind is the Kingsford family. I'm the one who set up the trap for Felix and I'm the one who dragged him out. However, I was too naive and didn't expect Felix to attack me. That's why Wu Yan had no choice but to fight Felix. So, I should be the one who caused the Kingsford family to lose their power. Charlotte's eyes were wet as she spoke. But now, not only is he being used by others because of me, he's also bearing the consequences for me. How can I just stand by and do nothing? In the end, the fact that the Kingsford family is the mastermind is just Teacher Kimberly's guess. Lei Zhen chased after them with Yaya. She glared at Charlotte. Everything is just a guess. Who knows if it's true? But you said it yourself. It's impossible for a single person to be able to threaten him. Only by relying on the power of an entire force could they possibly threaten him, right? Charlotte was unmoved. It seemed that she had completely believed that the mastermind behind this was the Kingsford family. Although the Kingsford family has lost their power, their influence is still not enough. However, his influence is still not something a normal person can compare to. Wu Yan alone. No matter how strong he is, an individual's strength is limited, isn't it? According to what you said, there are forces that are comparable to the Kingsford family. How can you be sure that it is the Kingsford family? Lei Zhen's voice grew louder. Even if the Kingsford family is behind this, as you said, the power of one person is limited. Do you think you can fight against the Kingsford family by yourself? Even if I can't, I'll go. Charlotte shouted. I won't let him bear all this alone. After that, Charlotte turned around once more and wanted to run away. But her two hands were tightly gripped by a pair of slender yet strong hands. Big sister. And Juliet pursed her lips stubbornly. You can't go. Wu Yan definitely wouldn't want to see you like this. Flay used her red eyes, which were usually filled with weakness but were now filled with determination, to look at Charlotte. He killed the dean because of you. So, at the very least, please calm down. Only then can you bring him back, right? Charlotte lowered her head, hiding her expression under her dazzling bangs. Not long after, sparkling liquid silently slid down her face and dripped onto the ground. Sigh. Sigmund sighed. Now, what we can be sure of is that the other party isn't just one person. It's an influential force. Otherwise, Wu Yan wouldn't have compromised and Angeliet wouldn't have been able to wander around the academy so freely. She even came to our side. The other party is using Angeliet as a hostage to threaten Wu Yan. Lei Zhen calmly analyzed. Logically speaking, since Angeliet is with us, the hostage should have been rescued, right? Is there a need for that guy to submit? This proves that the other party has the confidence to threaten Angeliet's life at any time. Sigmund's gaze sharpened as he scanned the surroundings. For example, there's someone nearby who's constantly monitoring Angeliet. Hearing that, everyone's body tensed up. That's not the same, there's someone watching. Lei Zhen turned his gaze towards Angeliet, sizing up her curvaceous body. You stinky man. Angeliet's pretty face immediately turned pale, and she retreated a few steps. What do you want to do to me? Lei Zhen. Yaya's expression was as fierce as an Azura's. You're actually looking at this vixen with such a perverted gaze. Could it be that you've taken a liking to her? At least at this time, can you seriously consider the meaning of my actions? Lei Zhen's serious expression crumbled as he screamed like a madman. I'm just wondering if there's a magic bomb or something like pain planted on Angeliet's body. If that's the case, then it makes sense why the other party allowed Angeliet to run around freely. In any case, if Wu Yan or Angeliet wanted to resist, they could detonate some sort of threat in Angeliet's body and everything would be over. The other party must have the confidence to keep Angeliet's life in their hands, that's why they allowed her to run around freely. Of course, there's also the possibility that there's someone watching Angeliet all the time, ready to take her life at any time. But at the very least, no one here noticed anyone watching them. Flay even asked the automaton of the Garm series to sniff around the surroundings. However, they still did not manage to sniff out the presence of another person in the surroundings. Angeliet. Charlotte seemed to have pulled herself together. She pulled Angeliet's hand and spoke with a worried expression. Did they do anything to you? Angeliet fell silent, and then slowly broke free from Charlotte's grip. Please don't meddle in my affairs anymore, big sister. Angeliet lowered her head, her low voice echoing in the room. Mr. Wu Yan is being threatened, sister is in so much pain, and everyone is so worried because of me. So, don't worry about me and let me run my own course. This way, Mr. Wu Yan will be able to return. What nonsense are you spouting? Charlotte said angrily. You're my sister, how can I let you run your own course? Juliet glanced at Charlotte and clenched her teeth. She didn't say anything else and ran into the depths of the forest. Wait. Juliet. Charlotte was shocked. She wanted to chase after Juliet, but Sigmund stopped her. Let Juliet go. Sigmund, why are you, just like Sigmund said, let Juliet leave our side for now. Lei Zhen interrupted Charlotte's words. Next, we need to think of a way to bring Wu Yan back. For this, there are many things we need to discuss. If there really is someone watching Juliet's surroundings, wouldn't bringing Juliet with us expose our movements to the enemy as well? This. Charlotte was speechless, but she still spoke with a face full of worry. But I'm afraid Juliet will take things too hard. Juliet is the only bargaining chip that can threaten Wu Yan. They won't let this chip slip away. Sigmund said in a deep voice. We can rest assured about Juliet's safety for now. Charlotte hesitated. After a while, she let out a sigh. I understand. But, do you want to get involved as well? He saved me before. Flay said without hesitation. This time, it's my turn to save him. I'm not that familiar with him. Lei Zhen and Yaya looked at each other and smiled. However, we agreed to fight again during the award ceremony. If he runs away just like that, I will be troubled, you all. Charlotte turned around and let her choked voice resound in the surroundings. You, idiots, well, in short, let's form a battle line first. Lei Zhen smiled and became serious again. Wu Yan's target is the school head. Since the school head is still alive, Wu Yan will definitely find him again. We must stop him from killing the school head. Sigmund's voice was strong and forceful. Once he kills the school head, no matter how many difficulties we have, we will not be able to salvage the situation. Charlot and Flay glanced at each other and nodded their heads heavily. Chapter 1671. Walpurgis Kingly School of Engineering, Griffin Lodge. Charlotte opened the door to her room and brought Sigmund in. She waved her hand and closed the door behind her. She went to her own bed and fell on it. Logically speaking, since the curfew had passed, even if Charlotte was one of the 13, she should have been scolded by the dormitory supervisor for not locking the door when she came back. In the past, it wasn't as if Charlotte hadn't sneaked out at night. Every time, the warden of the Griffin hut would give her a good scolding. However, tonight, Charlotte returned to her room without a hitch. The reason was none other than the glove bearers who were qualified to join the night gathering had the right to postpone their return to their dorm during the night gathering. After all, the night meeting would last until midnight every night, even if the battle ended earlier. Therefore, for the convenience of the glove bearers, the dormitory supervisor would give them the spare key to the main door during the night gathering, allowing them to decide on the time and return to their dorm freely. Thanks to this, Charlotte didn't have to be scolded by the dormitory supervisor at night. Otherwise, with her current agitation, she would have flipped out. She buried her face in her bed and smelled the fragrance from her body. However, Charlotte's mind was in a mess. It wasn't Charlotte's fault. After all, too many things had happened tonight. First, the battlefield of the night assembly was destroyed, and the dean's life was targeted. Then, the battlefield of the night assembly was destroyed. The one who targeted the dean's life was none other than Charlotte's only friend in the academy, or rather, in the world. Again. Her long-lost sister suddenly appeared in front of Charlotte and asked her to stop her only friend from murdering the dean. After everything was over for the time being. One after another, the inside stories were revealed. Charlotte's sister was taken as a hostage by someone else. In order to save her sister, Charlotte's only friend had no choice but to assassinate the dean and become a criminal worthy of capital punishment. The mastermind behind this is most likely someone that Charlotte admired in the past but tried to frame Charlotte. In the end, Charlotte found out and caused Felix's family to lose their influence in the political world. Also, the Felix family. It should have been Charlotte's own responsibility, but she ended up letting her only friend, her only younger sister, shoulder everything for her. Charlotte, who looked strong but was actually very weak, almost couldn't breathe when the truth came out one after another. She shed tears. Sigmund. Charlotte opened her mouth in a low voice. Tell me, am I a person who brings misfortune to the people around me? Sigh. Sigh. Sigmund seemed to have expected Charlotte to have such a thought. He sighed. Sighed. Do you think everything is your fault? Am I wrong? Charlotte hugged the blanket tightly and buried her head in it. Back then, if it wasn't for the fact that I didn't control my automaton properly and let it bite someone, Count Bilo's family wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Father, mother, and Anli wouldn't have all disappeared. If Anli didn't go missing, she wouldn't have been taken as a hostage. She's being used to threaten my only friend. Charlotte's voice was getting lower and lower. Those who are close to me all met with misfortune and those around me left me one after another. Isn't this enough to prove that I'm a person who brings misfortune to others? So, do you think you should be responsible for the misfortune you brought to others? Sigmund landed in front of Charlotte and stared at her, who buried her head in the blanket. The reason you want to stop Wu Yan is because he's doing something you should be responsible for, right? Of course not. Of course not. Charlot immediately raised his head and looked at Sigmund as he denied it. Because he's my friend, I can't watch him become a criminal who will be ostracized by everyone. Furthermore, he did it for me. Just because he's your friend? Sigmund seemed to be trying to see through Charlotte's heart as he stared into her eyes. Don't tell me you don't think of him as a member of the opposite sex. Charlotte's eyes trembled violently as she became agitated. She wanted to say something, but in the end, the agitation in her eyes turned into sadness. Sigmund's real age was more than 10 times Charlotte's. Ever since Charlotte was born, Sigmund had always been by her side and had never left. Perhaps Charlotte's father didn't understand her, her mother didn't understand her, and even her sister, and Juliet, didn't understand her. However, Sigmund was definitely the person who understood her the most in the world. It was impossible for Charlotte's true thoughts to be hidden from Sigmund. He would be able to see through her with a single glance. And that was the truth. You think you don't have the right to like Wu Yan, right? Every word of Sigmund struck Charlotte's heart. Because you think you're an unfortunate woman. Liking someone will only bring misfortune to him. Because you think you need to revive the Bilo family and find your family. That's why you don't have time to waste on liking someone. Because you used to like Felix. If you fall in love with Wu Yan now, you're an inattentive and frivolous woman. Sigmund lowered his voice and slowly revealed all of Charlotte's worries. I'm right, aren't I? Charlotte went silent. That was a sign of being speechless. In response, Sigmund scolded Charlotte for the first time. Wu Yan can become a criminal who might be sentenced to capital punishment for you. Don't you dare to be mistaken as a frivolous woman for Wu Yan? This sentence was like a bolt of lightning that struck Charlotte. That's right. If Wu Yan can become a criminal for her sake and to save her sister, then why can't she become a frivolous woman for his sake? Even if outsiders look at me like that, even if they look down on me, despise me, and spurn me, so what? In the academy, didn't he also live under the same gazes of others? However, Wu Yan bore the weight of these gazes and approached me, becoming my one and only. Then, I just need to grab hold of this one and only, right? Anyway, this is how I've been living my life, isn't it? At this moment, all the confusion in Charlotte's heart was swept away, and the thoughts in her mind became clear all of a sudden. I'm sorry, Sigmund. Charlotte sat up and hugged Sigmund. A peaceful smile appeared on her face. Indeed, I've been using the term, frivolous woman, to avoid my true feelings. I've even forgotten that he's the one who brought light to my life. Are you finally willing to face your true feelings? Sigmund's calm voice was filled with excitement. Indeed, you and Wu Yan have only known each other for a short time. In fact, you were in love with another person not long ago. However, the one who brought light to your life was Wu Yan. When you suffered setbacks, loneliness, and fear, the one who helped you stand up again was Wu Yan. Thus, it is natural for you to like Wu Yan. Sigmund advised. Unlike Felix, who only existed in your imagination, Wu Yan is the one who is worthy of your pursuit. Charles, you must not forget your true feelings. I won't. Sigmund. Charlotte looked out of the window and looked at the full moon and stars hanging high in the night sky. Her resolute words gradually echoed in the cold room. I will bring him back. Not because he is my friend, and not because I feel like I owe him, but because he is the person I like the most. Chapter 1672. The sky was blue and the morning light shone. The cold morning breeze swept across the entire Walpurgis Wangli Machine Learning Academy, whistling and blowing to every corner. In the cold breeze, the grass swayed, the leaves flew, and the sounds of birds, beasts, and insects turned into echoes in the forest and gradually spread out, making the morning more peaceful than the night. However, no matter how peaceful it was just on the surface. Whether it was those in the know or those with sharp senses, they could faintly sense that during this period of time, Walpurgis Wangli Machine Learning Academy would not be too peaceful. As a matter of fact, what happened last night had spread throughout the entire Walpurgis Wangli Machine Learning Academy in a short span of a night. Nowadays, there was almost no one in the Walpurgis Royal Tactical Academy who didn't know about this. The fourth member of the 13, Scarlet Eyes, had destroyed the venue of the night gathering when he won the first battle of the night gathering. He even almost killed the principal. It couldn't be helped. There were too many people at the venue of the night gathering last night. Even if there weren't 1,000, there were at least 700 to 800. Under such circumstances, Wu Yan used some kind of defensive means to protect the people at the venue, but he left the principal alive and attacked the principal. There were too many people who saw it. There were too many witnesses. Even if they wanted to deny it. How could they deny it? As for why the fourth of the 13, Scarlet Eyes, who defeated Felix, attacked the principal, the outsiders didn't understand. However, in this world, the most unstoppable thing was rumors. As a result, in response to Scarlet Eyes' attack on the venue of the night gathering, Scarlet Eyes, guess after guess turned into rumors. Instantly, the news spread throughout the Walpurgis Wangli School of Mechanics. Of course, rumors were just rumors. When it fell into the ears of the wise, they knew it couldn't be any more fake and could only be treated as a joke after a meal. However, as the saying went, even a blind cat can catch a dead mouse. Some of the rumors poked at something that was extremely unfavorable to the principal and Wu Yan. It also fell into the hands of some people with bad intentions. Charlotte, who was having breakfast with Sigmund in the student cafeteria, overheard the conversation among the students. Who would have thought that the newcomer, Scarlet Eyes, would actually do something like destroying the night meeting? It's not as simple as destroying the night gathering. Back then, everyone at the venue was protected by an unknown magic spell, only the principal wasn't protected. On top of that, the arrow shot by Scarlet Eyes that was attacking in mid-air was also aimed at the dean. Needless to say, Scarlet Eyes must be trying to assassinate the dean. How dare he offend the symbol of the Academy's authority? He's going to be sentenced to death. I thought something was wrong. Say, a freshman who just transferred to the Academy was already in the limelight and suppressed Magnus before he even entered the Academy. How could a normal person do that? That Scarlet Eyes must be a genius that was specially nurtured by some force, faction? Could it be a faction that doesn't get along with Felix's Kingsford family? If that's the case, then the matter of Felix being a Kaibal candy, that's right, it's very likely that he was slandered. Hearing this, a lot of noise in the student cafeteria quieted down, and the surrounding atmosphere suddenly became subtle. Sigmund couldn't swallow his favorite chicken anymore. Charlotte's hand holding the cutlery couldn't help but tremble. However, the students who didn't notice this continued to brag. Speaking of which, I can't believe that Felix is a Kaibal candy. I still can't believe it. I think it's very suspicious too. But isn't that a crime that all the professors, guards, and disciplinary committee members testified and the dean personally judged? However, I've also heard that the dean refused the investigation team of the Royal Family of England and other forces to investigate the campus. Since we are certain that Felix is a Kaibal candy, Why did he refuse other people's investigation? That's right. Also, don't you think the dean's judgment was too fast? So, the dean already judged Felix's crime as soon as he caught him. That's very suspicious. On top of that, Felix was captured by the Scarlet Eyes, and now, the Scarlet Eyes is here to assassinate the dean. In other words, Felix was set up by the dean and the Scarlet Eyes. Now, the Scarlet Eyes are trying to assassinate the dean and silence him so that the truth will never see the light of day again? That's very likely. That's very possible. After all, even Felix's ranking has been replaced by Scarlet Eyes by the dean. He's just a new student. Even if he's a bit strong, he shouldn't be given such a high ranking right away, right? So to speak, Scarlet Eyes is a genius raised by a certain hostile force of the Kingsford family. He snuck into the academy just to conspire with the dean and frame Felix so that the Kingsford family would fall, right? It's very possible. After all, we still don't know the background of Scarlet Eyes, don't we? Looks like Scarlet Eyes is an evil gang. Clang. At this moment, the sound of something smashing onto the ground rang out loudly, causing the entire student cafeteria to go completely silent. It was so quiet that even the sound of a needle dropping on the ground could be heard clearly. That was the sound of Charlotte standing up with all her might, causing the chair to fall heavily to the ground. Not only that, but a burst of berserk mana slowly rose from Charlotte's body. It was like a flame that could be seen with the naked eye and entered Sigmund's body, causing his body to emit a radiance of mana. Raising his head, Charlot used his cold, furious, and ruthless gaze to sweep through the entire student cafeteria. Everyone who was swept by his gaze revealed a horrified expression, their faces filled with shock. Then, Charlotte's low voice echoed above the student cafeteria. "You! I dare you to say one more bad word about me." There weren't many students in the cafeteria, but there were still over 100 of them. However, even though there were over 100 people present, not a single one of them made a sound. In fact, their faces were covered with sweat. That was to be expected. Who is this person? Her codename was Tyrant Rex. She was the legendary Tyrant Rex who was incomparably violent and would attack whenever she wanted to. She was the Tyrant Rex who dared to beat up the senior students, destroy the professor's research labs, and blow up the academy's lecture halls. Thus, there was not a single person here who wasn't confident. If there was anyone who dared to speak ill of Wu Yan again, the Tyrant Rex would definitely turn the entire cafeteria and even that person into ashes. No one would doubt that Charlotte was capable of doing that. Following Charlotte's outburst, the magic power on her body also started to spread through the entire cafeteria. All of the students present turned incomparably pale. Not to mention speaking, they did not even dare to move in the slightest. Tyrant Rex. Suddenly, a voice sounded from the entrance of the cafeteria. Charlotte looked toward the source of the voice. The next moment, Flay's gasping appearance as she stood there appeared before Charlotte's eyes. Soon after, Flay said something that caused Charlotte's expression to change on the spot. Found Wu Yan. Chapter 1673. Not far from the central lecture hall of the Walpurgis Royal Mechanical Academy, there was a mansion-like building. This mansion-like building was the residence of the Dean of the Walpurgis Royal Mechanical Academy, the strongest magician of the 19th century, Edward Rutherford. Rutherford's personal residence. At this very moment, armed guards were patrolling the surroundings of the mansion. They were very vigilant. Beside the armed guards, there were strange-looking robots that looked like they were made of white wood. Of course, the white material on the robot's body was not made of wood, but of a white metal sheet. The robots were wearing toy-like helmets on their heads. Some were big, some were small. The big ones were 2 meters tall, and the small ones were only the size of a child. Their bodies were made of white iron sheets, and they were holding shields, spears, knight swords, and other weapons. These white robots with weapons were the mass-produced automaton, the Heimgarder, that was assigned to every guard in the Walpurgis Wangli Robotics Academy. In terms of performance, these mass-produced automatons were naturally not comparable to the real high-level automatons. However, as a mass-produced automaton, their performance was not much weaker. At least, in terms of individual performance, the Heimgarter series automaton's performance was not any weaker than the Garm series automaton's performance. However, at this moment, each of the guards was equipped with one such automaton. At the very least, there were 20 to 30 of them following the guards around the dean's mansion on guard. Such tight security. Even if the opponent was a real Demon King level puppet user, it would take a long time. It would take a long time to break through, let alone an ordinary puppet user. It would be impossible for them to break through such defenses. It could not be helped. Last night, the dean was almost assassinated. He almost lost his life. If it was not for the Academy's number 1, Magnus, who knew if the dean would still be alive. Under such circumstances, how could the upper echelons of the Walpurgis Royal Mechanical Academy not be on alert and increase their defenses for the dean? Moreover, their enemy was the Scarlet Eyes, who was on par with the Marshal. It was necessary to be on guard. While the guards were patrolling around the dean's mansion with their Heimgarter series automaton, on the rooftop of a building not far from the dean's mansion, a few figures were overlooking the scene. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25. 26. 27. Nagisa counted with her fingers and was speechless. 27 automatons and 27 guards. Are we really going to break in? The best way is to bypass the guards and use spatial teleportation to directly teleport into the mansion. Natsuki opened her parasol and placed it on her shoulder. She looked down while shielding herself from the sun. But it seems like that's not going to work. It was hard to detect, but anyone who was sensitive to mana would be able to notice it. Around the dean's residence, there was an extremely dim semicircular light film covering a radius of 10 to 20 meters, protecting the residents within. There were also some obscure runes on the light film. They were moving slowly like water ripples. A barrier. Wu Yan stood in front of the girls and he frowned when he saw the light barrier that normal people wouldn't be able to see. From the looks of it, it seems to be a barrier that can isolate the transmission of magic power, right? Mana from the outside won't be able to enter the barrier and mana from the inside won't be able to reach the outside. Naturally, magic from the outside won't be able to affect the inside. That's the nature of the barrier. Natsuki said calmly. If that's the case, even if I teleport into the barrier, my mana will be cut off the moment I enter the barrier. In other words, teleportation will only bring us to the edge of the barrier. The moment we touch the barrier, the teleportation will fail and will be revealed. Wu Yan stroked his chin. If that's the case, we won't be able to teleport into the barrier. We won't be able to blow up the dean and his mansion, so, the conclusion is that we have to break in? Nagisa seemed to be excited and nervous at the same time. Then, we have to, that's right. Natsuki nodded. If we want to enter the mansion and find the dean, we'll have to fight the guards. If that's the case, we might as well just barge in. Wu Yan made a decision. Take down all the guards. Ikaros and Astria nodded without hesitation. Nagisa and Kanon were a bit nervous. Natsuki looked at Wu Yan with a meaningful look. Why do I feel like you're excited? Am I? Wu Yan had an innocent look on his face. I'm being threatened, I'm being used. I have no choice but to kill the dean, how can I be excited? What are you up to now? Nothing. It's nothing. Wu Yan smiled as he looked at the dean's mansion. I'm just thinking about how the strongest magician of the 19th century didn't even bother to pursue the matter. He didn't even send anyone to hunt down the assassin. Instead, he hid in his mansion and waited for the assassin to come. It's hilarious. Ikaros, Astria, Nagisa, and Kanon were confused by Wu Yan's words. Natsuki smiled as she thought of something. Wu Yan suddenly voiced out in this inexplicable situation. Then, let's go. From the moment the headmaster had returned to his residence last night, the surroundings of the headmaster's residence had been strictly forbidden. Apart from the guards, even the disciplinary committee members were not allowed to enter without the headmaster's orders. That's why it's easy for the security guards to patrol the area with their Heimgarter automatons. Other than the dean and the security guards, no one is allowed to enter the mansion. As long as the intruder isn't the dean or the security guards can arrest the intruder on the spot. It's that simple. However, the simpler something is, the easier it is to make a mistake. The guards were only focused on patrolling and trying to find people who had entered the place, but they had completely forgotten about it. There's a possibility that the intruder will attack them, whoosh. Just like that, a gust of cold wind started blowing around the dean's mansion. The temperature gradually dropped, even dimming the sunlight that shone down from the sky. A gust of cold mist mixed with white cold air suddenly blew in from all directions, instantly covering every corner of the scene. What's going on? What's going on? The guards did not even have time to activate their own mana before they were shocked by this sudden scene. By the time they realized that something was wrong, pieces of crystal clear ice crystals were quietly falling from the sky like snowflakes. One of the guards didn't even notice that a snowflake-like ice crystal had landed on his shoulder. Clink. Immediately, the ice crystal bloomed like a lotus flower, and with a light crisp sound, it turned into an ice flower. Then, the ice flower started spreading on the security guard's body. The guard didn't even have time to react. In less than a second, his entire body was covered in a huge ice flower and he was frozen. Chapter 1674. Ding. All the guards turned their heads to look in the direction where the sound came from when they heard the crisp sound. Immediately afterward, the group of guards saw with their own eyes that one of their companions had a vigilant expression on his face. He was completely unaware of what was happening to him. Without being able to react at all, he was frozen by a huge ice flower. When the guards saw their companion turning into a gigantic ice flower, pieces of crystal clear ice crystals continued to fall from the sky onto the guards and the automatic puppets of the Heimgarter series that they were equipped with. Ding, 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 ding. At that instant, clear and crisp sounds echoed around the entire dean's mansion. It was like the notes of a beautiful piece of music that reverberated rhythmically in the air. Ding, 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 ding. Every crisp sound was accompanied by a gigantic ice flower that bloomed. The guards were completely covered by the ice flowers that bloomed on their bodies with panic written all over their faces. At the same time, it transformed into a giant ice flower. Frozen by the giant ice flower were the automatons of the Heimgarter series. Enemy. Enemy attack. The guards finally understood what was going on. One by one, they yelled at the top of their lungs. However, it was already too late when they realized what was going on. Ding, 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 ding. Pieces of ice crystals silently fell on the bodies of the guards one by one, making light sounds. The gigantic ice flowers bloomed one after another and froze the guards one by one. The guards could only look on in panic, surprise, and horror as the ice flowers bloomed one after another. They were frozen in the ice flowers like specimens. The expressions of panic, surprise, and fear were still vividly displayed on his face. They were also reflected through the translucent ice flower. In less than a minute, the guards and automatic puppets of the Heimgarter series around the dean's mansion were all frozen by the gigantic ice flowers. They were distributed around the dean's mansion lifelike. The entire place fell into a dead silence, not far from the dean's mansion, amidst the white cold mist that blew in the air. A few figures slowly walked out. Looking around at the guards and automatic puppets of the Heimgarter series that were frozen in the gigantic ice flowers, Wu Yan curled his lips. Nice to look at but useless, indeed. 27 guards, 27 Heimgarter series automatic puppets with high performance, were all frozen in less than a minute. It was said that among the guards of the Walpurgis Wangli School of Mechanics, most of them were outstanding. Most of them were outstanding puppeteers and graduates who had completed 4 years of school. Each of them was comparable to a glove holder in terms of strength. They were not weak. Now, Wu Yan was certain that these guards who were comparable to a glove holder would only be around 70 or 80 in terms of strength based on the Night Gathering's ranking. Although a large part of the reason was that the guards were careless and were ambushed. That was why they were taken care of so quickly. But no matter what, 27 puppeteers and 27 automatic puppets were taken care of in an instant. It was a little unreasonable. With Wu Yan's strength, he was qualified to make such a comment. Natsuki. He looked up. Looking at the dean's mansion, Wu Yan spoke softly. How is it? I'm fine. Natsuki's figure suddenly appeared beside Wu Yan. I've checked it. It's just a barrier that isolates the transmission of magic. It doesn't have any defensive properties and it doesn't have any trap effects. There's no need to remove it, just go in. Okay. Wu Yan lifted his feet and led the group of girls towards the entrance of the dean's mansion. Suddenly, a voice called out to him. Wait. As the voice sounded, a huge black shadow appeared in the sky. A giant dragon with a steel-colored body flew out from the forest in the distance. It rushed into the sky and circled around before it descended from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Bang! A muffled sound was heard. The ground shook slightly. The ground where the giant steel-colored dragon landed cracked and countless rocks scattered in all directions. The moment the giant steel-colored dragon landed on the ground, figures jumped from the back of the giant steel-colored dragon one after another. They were none other than Charlot, Flay, Raisin, Ye, Sigmund, and the 5 Garm series automatons that he had found. Yen. Charlot took a step forward excitedly when he saw Wu Yan and the group of girls standing in the center of the giant ice flowers. However, when he saw the guards frozen in the ice flowers, his gem-like eyes widened. They, Flay, Lei Zhen, Yaya, and Sigmund all saw the expressions of panic, shock, and fear on the faces of the guards that were frozen in the ice flowers. Astonishment appeared on their faces. Could it be, don't worry, they're not dead. They're just frozen. When Wu Yan saw the shocked expression on his friends' faces, he chuckled softly as though he could see through their thoughts. Heat up those ice flowers and melt the ice. They'll be able to come out safely. Of course, I can't guarantee that they won't catch a cold or have a fever. When Charlot and the others heard that, they heaved a sigh of relief. However, at the same time, their hearts felt heavy. When they saw Wu Yan's carefree appearance and how there was not even a speck of dust on his body, as well as the calm expressions of the girls beside him, it was not difficult to imagine that these guards were merely here to deliver food to them. That was a total of 27 guards equipped with automatic puppets of the Heimgarder series, whose performance was comparable to the automatic puppets of the Garm series. If they were to fight against such a group of guards alone, even if it was the strongest puppeteer in the academy other than Magnus, they would still have to consume a lot of magic power to deal with them even if they were not injured. However, Wu Yan was still the same as before. He had a lazy smile on his face. There was not even a single drop of sweat on his face. It is clear that his strength has exceeded the level of a student of the academy. Just like Magnus, he is a true demon king. When Charlot, Flay, Raisin, Yaya, and Sigmund were sizing up Wu Yan, they noticed something different about him. First of all, the group of beautiful girls were still wearing the same white knight battle uniform with red edges and a red pleated skirt. However, Wu Yan didn't wear his usual academy uniform. Instead, he wore a black shirt and black casual trousers with a black jacket. His entire outfit is pitch black. Similarly, in that group of young girls, one of the young girls was replaced by another young girl. The lively, cute, and cheerful Nagisa was nowhere to be seen. At this moment, other than Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, and Kanon, there was another girl beside Wu Yan. Charlot and the others did not recognize her at all. She was a beautiful girl with long, light golden hair that seemed to be able to change colors. She had a pair of blue eyes that flickered with flames. Her ears were slightly elongated like those of a fairy. She was exceptionally beautiful. The girl's long, light golden hair fluttered in the wind as if there was an invisible wind blowing. Every time her hair fluttered, the color on it would change into a rainbow. It was like a dreamy mirage. White cold mist fluctuated around her, causing the temperature to drop. Chapter 1675. Looking at the beautiful young lady who had a naive, romantic, and incomparably arrogant expression on her face, with white cold mist rolling around her and causing the surrounding temperature to drop, Charlot, Flay, Raisin, Ye, Sigmund, and the others became absent-minded. At the same time, their hearts also rose. Since there was a white cold mist rolling around the young girl that caused the temperature to drop continuously, then the one who caused the 27 guards equipped with the Heimgarter series of automaton to fall into a state of frost was undoubtedly her. Since she was able to take care of 27 guards equipped with the Heimgarter series automaton, if this girl was an automaton, her performance would not be inferior to any of the automatons present. Moreover, the magic circuit that she was equipped with was related to ice. Let me introduce her to everyone. Looking at Charlotte, Flay, Raisin, Yaya, and Sigmund who are staring at the seductress, Wu Yan extended his hand and placed it on the slender shoulder of the girl who is surrounded by a white cold mist. I should have told Charlotte that Nagisa has 2 personalities, right? 2 personalities? Charlotte was startled for a moment before she recalled it. She asked with an uncertain expression. You're saying Agrora, Nagisa's other personality? Wu Yan looked at Charlotte and the others and chuckled softly. A personality that will only appear when Nagisa is in battle. Charlotte and the others glanced at Agrora discreetly before withdrawing their gazes. Although no one in the room had ever heard of an automaton with dual personalities, and there was even one that would only switch out during a battle, there were quite a number of automatons that could transform into human forms. Then, after Nagisa activated her transformation ability, they would only see Agrora as an incarnation. An incarnation would suffice. If it were any other time, it would be hard for them not to be curious and properly inquire about Agrora. But now. However, it was not the time to ask about this. Let me introduce myself. In a situation like this, isn't it a bit of a killjoy? Raisin had a teasing expression on his face as if he did not understand the position of both sides. Why don't we go to the student cafeteria and have a seat first? Nice. It's rare for you to invite me. Wu Yan shrugged. Sorry, I still have something to do here. It won't be too late for me to go with you after I'm done with it. It'll be too late when you're done with it. Charlotte stood up involuntarily and shouted at Wu Yan excitedly. Her voice was filled with pleading. Come back with us. Yen. Yen? Wu Yan was stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly. This is the first time you didn't call me that guy or that pervert. Come back with me. You can listen to it as many times as you want in the future. I won't call you that anymore. Charlotte held back her tears and forced a smile. That's why, come back with us. It's rare for you to be this gentle today. Wu Yan looked at Charlotte with a surprised expression. He didn't say anything about Charlotte's request. If you were like this in the past, you would definitely be very popular. I don't need to be popular with others. Charlotte shouted sorrowfully. I only want you to listen to me this once. Just this once. Haha. Wu Yan scratched his face and spoke in a pretentious manner. This seems to be the first time you've begged me like this. What should I do? Yen. At this moment, Flay also took a step forward. With a timid yet pleading tone, she tried her best to squeeze out a voice. You can't kill the dean. If you kill the dean, you won't be able to make a comeback. Is that so? Wu Yan regained his composure and he continued with a calm expression. Unfortunately, I've already assassinated the dean once. However, the dean isn't dead yet. You have your own difficulties. You don't really want to kill the dean, do you? Leijin said in a deep voice. You should stop before you commit a grave mistake. As long as you tell the dean that you were used, then. Then what? Wu Yan interrupted Leijin and looked at him mockingly. Will the dean choose to believe me? Yes. Leijin wanted to say yes, but he couldn't say it no matter what. After all, even if the mastermind behind all of this wasn't the Kingsford family, it was still a major power on the same level as the Kingsford family. That kind of big power that occupied a high position in the political world had an extraordinarily wide influence. I'm not afraid to tell you that the other party even occupies a high position in the academy. Wu Yan shook his head. If you were to compare them to me, one side is just a student of the academy, the other side is a great power that can influence the political world and even infiltrate the upper echelons of the academy. If the two of us were to speak, who would others choose to believe? Yes. The answer was obvious. It was like a commoner telling the king that a noble framed him so he would assassinate the king. The king would think that the commoner was spouting nonsense. Not to mention that the noble who framed the commoner was the king's favorite. Wasn't it obvious who the king would choose to believe? Without clear evidence, no one would choose to believe Wu Yan. Isn't there still Anli? Charlotte said loudly. Anli is also a victim and a bargaining chip used to threaten you. If she testifies, then there will be a chance to turn things around, right? I have to say, your thoughts are more naive than a child's. You didn't even consider anything before standing in front of me, right? Wu Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Well, even if others choose to believe me, so what? Do you not care about Anli's life? Charlotte and the others were stunned. Since you've seen Anli, you should know more or less about the inside story, right? Wu Yan continued in an indifferent tone. Right now, Anli's life is in the hands of the mastermind. That's why I went to assassinate the dean. If I give up, what will happen to Anli? Hearing Wu Yan admit that he went to assassinate the dean because he wanted to save Anli's life, Charlotte became agitated once more. If Anli is willing to tell us everything, the academy will definitely protect her. Even if the academy doesn't protect Anli, Teacher Kimberly is still in the academy. Raisin advised. If you tell Teacher Kimberly everything, Teacher Kimberly will definitely represent the Magician Association to protect Anli. That's why I said, you didn't consider anything. Wu Yan's voice turned cold. If it's just protection, do you think I can't protect Anli with my strength? Charlotte, Flay, Raisin, and the others were speechless. Indeed. Even though the other party was a powerful faction, this was still the highest academy in the magic world. They couldn't possibly do anything big. Wu Yan could easily deal with those little tricks by himself. The other party told me personally that I had to stay by Angeliet's side for the rest of my life. Otherwise, if I reveal any flaws, the assassins hiding in the dark will come out like venomous snakes. Can you guarantee that someone will protect Angeliet 24/7 without slacking off? Raisin, Flay, and the others fell silent. Then I will protect Anli. Charlotte bit her lips so hard that it looked like she could bleed. Anli is my younger sister. Protecting her is my responsibility. You don't have to take on everything for me. Take on everything for you? Wu Yan sighed helplessly. Perhaps this is part of the reason. After all, to me, the other party is just a clown who knows how to play petty tricks. But to you, the other party is an invincible giant. I can't bear to let you take on everything for me. He didn't give Charlotte and the others a chance to reply as he continued in an indifferent tone. Get out of my way. Hearing those words that sounded like an ultimatum, Charlot, Flay and Lejeune took a glance at one another and nodded. Magic power fluctuations gradually rose from their bodies. Since that's the case, we will bring you back even if we have to defeat you. Chapter 1676. Since that's the case, we will bring you back even if we have to defeat you. 3 majestic streams of mana surged and surged, surging into the bodies of the automatons. Roar! In an instant, Sigmund's body expanded to the size of a building. His steel-colored dragon scales flickered with an ice-cold luster under the sunlight. Roar! As though responding to Sigmund's roar, the Garm series automaton howled like wolves and scattered in all directions, forming an encirclement in the surroundings. Unlike Sigmund and the Garm series automaton, Yaya jumped out silently and stood in front of Raisin. Mist of magic power surged around her body as she stared ahead. At this moment, the sixth member of the 13, the mad dog, who possessed the world's highest level automaton, and that a dog princess who possessed multiple automatons and had greatly improved her strength stood before Wu Yan together. Without a doubt, Charlot possessed the strength to rank within the top 10 even in the Valpurgis Royal Tactical Academy. Lei Zhen's strength was also sufficient to fight against the 13 men. Although Flay was slightly weaker, she was still in existence capable of stalling Lei Zhen for an hour. When the three of them worked together, one of them used an automaton that carried a magic circuit that contained the truth of the universe in his body, the other used the highest level of automaton in the world, and the last one had multiple automaton. Who could ignore them? However, when Wu Yan saw Charlotte, Flay, and Raisin joining forces, he smiled. His smile was filled with mockery. Defeat me? Wu Yan sneered as he swept his calm gaze across Charlotte, Flay, Raisin, and their respective automaton. Give it a try then. Wu Yan didn't even need to extend his hand. Instead, his body exploded with a burst of magic power. Like a raging storm, the magic power surged and swept away everything in its path. The magic power was several times stronger than Charlotte, Flay, and Raisin's combined magic power. It was unimaginable that a human could possess such magic power. Charlot, Flay, and Lei Zhen felt as if all the pores on their bodies were about to explode. Their pupils abruptly shrunk when they felt the berserk magic energy. Swish! The sound of something breaking through the air descended from above the three of them. Be careful. Raisin, who had the sharpest senses, was the first to react. As he shouted, he leaped away. Apart from Raisin, the others only heard the sound of something breaking through the air. Then, an invisible impact crashed onto the ground. Boom! The instant the explosion rang out, Sigmund's enormous body blocked Charlot's path. Yaya also flipped over and hugged Flay, who was at a loss of what to do. Boom! Then, the ground shook violently. A burst of invisible impact erupted and turned into a strong gale that rushed in all directions. Boom! Sigmund's huge body seemed to have been hit by a mountain, and Yaya seemed to have been hit by an invisible hammer. The two automatons, both of which were of the highest level, were sent flying backward like kites with their strings cut, smashing heavily on the ground not far away. Yaya! Raisin, who was the only one who managed to dodge in time, turned pale with fright. I'm fine. Yaya hugged Flay and jumped up from the ground. She didn't seem to have suffered any injuries. Flay, who was protected by Yaya, was also unharmed. It seems that at the crucial moment, Yaya activated her magic circuit in time. Yaya's body contained a magic circuit called King Kong Strength. It was an existence that could materialize the target of magic at the molecular level, allowing the target to unleash thousands of times more strength and toughness. It was known as the toughest magic circuit in the world. Through the magic of King Kong Strength, Yaya was able to make her slender body harder than steel in an instant. She could also make her slender fists unleash terrifying strength that could shatter rocks. It was a magic spell that was purely used to increase attack and defense. Come to think of it, Yaya must have activated her magic circuit just in time to enhance herself with King Kong's strength. That was why she was able to completely block the impact that was enough to send Sigmund, who was as tall as a building, flying. Are you alright? On the other side, Charlotte, who was protected by Sigmund, also supported Sigmund who had fallen to the ground. I'm fine. Sigmund flapped his wings and flew up with Charlotte on his back. Everyone present turned their gazes to the front and saw what was going on. At the center of the explosion, a petite young lady wearing a gorgeous night attire and holding a parasol silently descended from midair. Her delicate, childlike face stared ahead expressionlessly. Her gaze landed on Charlotte's group. Natsuki. Charlotte called out the petite young lady's name with a solemn expression. However, Natsuki didn't respond. She took down the parasol in her hand and gently closed it. Buzz! At the next moment, a purple magical ritual rippled from the front of the parasol. Inside the magical ritual, Spear-like chains emitting purple radiance coiled into a vortex and shot towards Charlotte's group. Dodge. This time, everyone reacted in time. Sigmund carried Charlot, Ye carried Flay, and Lei Jin ran by himself. They retreated rapidly, dodging the incoming chains and creating a distance between them and the headmaster's residence. Natsuki, along with Wu Yan, Ikaros, Astria, Agrora, Cannon, and the others, slowly emerged from the void and appeared in front of Charlotte's group. So that's how it is. Lei Jin squeezed out a smile. That wasn't an attack. Instead, it was an attack that forced us here, right? That's right. That's right, little brat. Natsuki said in an indifferent tone as she glanced ahead without any ripples. After all, if we were to fight beside the frozen guards and accidentally break some of them, you wouldn't be able to save them even if you wanted to, right? How gentle. Lei Jin said in a mocking tone, but the vigilance in his eyes had already started to fluctuate crazily. It's only natural. Raisin didn't understand what kind of attack that was. How can he not be vigilant? The one who spoke on Raisin's behalf was Charlotte. Natsuki. Charlotte clenched her fists. She stood on Sigmund's dragon head and yelled. Do you really want to fight us? Natsuki glanced at Charlotte. She raised the lace fan in her other hand and pointed it at Sigmund. Boom! In the next moment, Sigmund's body was hit by a shockwave without any warning. He howled in pain and fell down from the sky. It took him a while to adjust his body and land on the ground with his feet. Bang! 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 Sigmund staggered back a few steps. What? Charlotte, Flay, Raisin, and Yaya sucked in a breath of cold air. Raisin was already on high alert. He even prepared himself for another attack. In the end, he still failed to react to Natsuki's attack. What kind of attack is that? I don't intend to play this kind of game with you. Natsuki gracefully lowered her parasol and put away her lace fan as though she had just done something insignificant. Her azure eyes remained calm. That's why it would be best if you all are willing to back down obediently. You've always been the most rational and calm one. Charlotte gritted her teeth. Don't tell me you support Yen to kill someone who has nothing to do with him. I feel like laughing when I hear that. Doesn't an automaton have to obey its master? Yen has never treated you all as automatons. Instead, he treats you all as someone close to him whom he trusts absolutely, isn't that right? He will definitely listen to you, right? That's right. That's exactly why. Natsuki looked at Charlotte. He is the one who deserves my unconditional support, isn't he? Charlotte had nothing more to say. Since that's the case. Charlotte's expression turned resolute. Dense magical power surged from her body. I won't go easy on you either. Sigmund abruptly raised his head and roared at the top of his lungs. Roar. Yaya. Raisin gathered his magical power and turned it into a circle of light. Ripples spread out from his palm and entered Yaya's body. Let's go. Robbie. Riviera. Ruby. Lavina. Robin. It was unknown when Flay had retreated to a distant place. She closed her eyes and turned her magic power into wires. She divided them into 5 and sent them into the Garm series automaton that had formed the encirclement around her. I'm counting on you all. This battle for the sake of each other has begun. R1152. Chapter 1677. The surrounding space seemed to have turned into flames as it started to fluctuate irregularly. Behind them, the silent Wu Yan closed his eyes. He had no intention of saying anything to the group of girls. Instead, he incessantly mobilized the enormous amount of demonic energy that was comparable to the ocean and channeled it into Natsuki's body. With the support of the enormous amount of demonic energy, the power that belonged to Natsuki, other than the portion that was restricted by the restriction bracelet, surged forth without reservation. It allowed Natsuki's petite body to ignore gravity and gently float into the air. Looking down at Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen and the group of automatons from above, Natsuki's tranquil expression transformed into a mountain-like oppressive feeling. This caused the shoulders of Charlot and the others to sink and their expressions to turn grave. Looking at Natsuki who was floating in the air, Charlot lowered his voice and warned, "Be careful." Yen once said that Natsuki's body contains a magic circuit called spatial manipulation. It is capable of allowing Natsuki to freely use spatial magic. Freely use spatial magic? Flay was stunned. Lei Zhen spoke with a face filled with shock. Is that even possible? Spatial magic was the highest level of magic among all other magic spells. That was because even if it was contained in an automaton, the burden would still be enormous. If one wasn't a highly skilled puppeteer, one wouldn't even be able to activate the magic circuit. Furthermore, that was when the spatial magic was separated and used separately. Only a single aspect could be used. For example, there were only spatial transference, spatial distortion, spatial fissure, and so on. However, Natsuki was able to freely use all of the spatial magic. With such a huge burden on just a single aspect, if one wasn't a highly skilled puppeteer, one wouldn't even be able to activate the magic circuit, much less the spatial magic. If there was really an automaton with a magic circuit of this level in its body, then Lei Zhen was certain. In this world, there wouldn't be a single puppeteer capable of using an automaton. Including the dean of the Valpurgis Royal Magic Academy, who was known as the strongest magician in the 19th century. Can you do it? Natsuki casually glanced at Charlotte and the others. Why don't you give it a try? After saying that, Natsuki raised her left hand that was holding the lace fan. He suddenly waved his hand. Boom! A muffled sound reverberated in the air. It was like a shock wave. It fell down violently. Boom! Suddenly, a lot of smoke and dust rose from where Lei Zhen was standing, as if he was hit by a mortar. Lei Zhen himself was sent flying and hit the trunk of a tree not far away. Lei Zhen. Lei Zhen, who had the keenest senses and was the most agile among them, could more or less perceive the invisible attack, but this time he was sent flying before he could even react. Yaya cried out in disbelief. However, Yaya didn't know that she was in a bit of a predicament. Boom! This time, the muffled sound came from Yaya's body. To be more precise, it came from inside her head. Following the muffled sound, Yaya, who was looking at Lei Zhen, staggered. Her vision shook intensely. As if she was drunk, she lost her balance and fell limply to the ground. Her face was pale. What's wrong? Flay was unable to conceal her trembling and cried out in alarm. What the hell is going on? Not to mention Flay, even Charlotte and Sigmund were trembling. This sort of invisible attack was like being possessed by a ghost. Adding on the fact that it was unknown, it was undoubtedly the easiest thing to incite fear in one's heart. Don't panic. Lei Zhen held his chest and struggled to stand up. His forehead was covered in sweat as he reminded them. If Natsuki's magic circuit is truly space manipulation, then the attack just now should be something similar to space vibration. It's a magic that directly vibrates space and forms an impact to attack the opponent. Directly vibrating space? Charlotte and Flay's expressions became clear. You're pretty smart, brat. Natsuki looked down at Lei Zhen who was struggling to stand up. Not only did I directly vibrate space to form an impact, I can also attack your brain through my control over space. Although the impact will be weaker because it will pass through your body, if your willpower is not strong enough, you will still be able to faint immediately. Directly attacking the brain. Lei Zhen looked at Yaya who had a pale face and was holding her head as if she was about to vomit. Lei Zhen gnashed his teeth in anger. Thus, no matter how hard Yaya's Vajra strength can make her body, she will not be able to defend against your attack. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your automaton for being too human-like. Natsuki raised her parasol. After all, an ordinary automaton doesn't have something as luxurious as a brain. The instant those words left her mouth, Natsuki spun the parasol in her hand and channeled her magic power into the parasol. She had used her magic. Hum. A purple magic formation immediately sprung up and expanded to a diameter of 2 to 3 meters. Chains flickering with purple light shot out from the magic formation and shot down in a densely packed manner. Charlotte and the others could not help but feel their scalps go numb when they saw the chains that covered their entire field of vision. They hurriedly controlled their automaton to dodge the chains. Yaya was the only one who was still sitting on the ground in a drunken stupor. She did not do anything to the chains that shot toward her. Without any suspense, she was tightly bound by the chains and hung up. Yaya. Lei Zhen's face was ashen as he frantically channeled his magic power into Yaya's body. Those weak chains. Break them for me. However, when the large amount of magic power Lei Zhen channeled was about to enter Yaya's body, it seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier. All of it stopped outside Yaya's body. It was as if it was rejected and could not enter Yaya's body no matter what. That's impossible. Lei Zhen's expression finally changed. Nothing is impossible. Natsuki said coldly. As long as I channel my magic power into my discipline lock and repel the external magic power, the little girl who is bound by the discipline lock won't be able to receive anyone's magic power. As she spoke, Natsuki waved the lace fan in her other hand, and the space behind Yaya began to ripple like waves. Then, move that little girl to another place first. When you all meet up again, the matter will be over. Along with this cold and emotionless voice, a chain extended out from the ripples of space behind Yaya and wrapped around her body. It pulled Yaya, who was bound by the commandment lock, towards the door that floated in the void and was used for teleportation. Without the ability to receive the magic power of a puppet user and with her head still in a dizzy state, Yaya's most prided Vajra strength couldn't be used at all. She didn't even have the strength to pull the discipline lock apart and could only be pulled into the space ripples bit by bit. I won't let you get away with this. Lei Zhen stood up. Just as he was about to run to Yaya's direction, a tender voice rang out, faster than Lei Zhen's movement. Everyone. Bang. 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 In an instant, a series of muffled gunshots shook the air. From all directions, formless sonic pressure cannons dug through the earth and cut through the air. Amidst the sharp vibrations, all of them landed on the discipline lock that extended from Natsuki's direction and tied to Yaya's body between the two girls. Bang! The sturdy commandment lock shuddered, causing Yaya, who was being pulled into the spatial ripples, to stop. Raster cannon. Soon after, another lovely cry sounded. A fatal beam of light flashed through the air like a meteor. Wherever it passed, the atmosphere and wind were vaporized into nothingness. With an irresistible force, it shot toward Nayu, who was floating in the air. The beam of light that contains the truth of the universe and can, in theory, wipe out everything. It's absolutely impossible to defend against and is absolutely impossible to defend against. In Natsuki's blue eyes, the beam of light gradually approached. Chapter 1678. Whoosh! A dazzling beam of light shot up from the ground into the sky, as if it wanted to cut the entire space in half. It streaked across the space, and also streaked across the chains of discipline that bound Yaya. Bang! Before the elemental destruction that contained the truth of the universe and was capable of destroying all material existence, even the chains of discipline were unable to resist the beam of light. Like magma, the chains of discipline that were streaked across by the beam of light melted like candy and broke apart. Yaya, who was bound by the chains of discipline and hung in midair, lost its binding power and fell to the ground. As for the beam of light, it continued to flash past. In the blink of an eye, it arrived before Nayu. Nayu's pair of azure eyes were turned golden by the dazzling light of the beam of light. Her field of vision was completely covered by the light from the beam of light. Apart from light, she was unable to see anything else. However, this did not cause any change to Nayu's delicate and beautiful face that seemed as if it would not change even if she were to face the destruction of heaven and earth. In fact, she did not even attempt to dodge, receive, resist or collide with the beam of light. Na Yu merely floated there without moving in the slightest. Seeing this, Charlotte cried out in shock. Quickly, dodge it. Unfortunately, Na Yu did not even attempt to dodge the beam of light. She allowed the beam of light capable of destroying everything to land on her body. The next moment, an inconceivable scene occurred. The beam of light that landed on Na Yu's body was like an illusion. It directly passed through Na Yu's petite body and continued to shoot into the sky. The beam of light turned into a ray of light and disappeared into the distant horizon. Charlotte, Sigmund, and the others were all stunned. Soon after, they discovered something. Before Na Yu, there was a small spatial ripple. It was fluctuating there. No. It wasn't just in front of Na Yu. Behind Na Yu, there was also a small spatial ripple. It was like a ripple in the water, creating circular ripples in space. As for those two spatial ripples, perfect. They were the same size as the front end of the Araster cannon from earlier. Seeing this, how could Charlotte, Flay, Lei Zhen and the others not understand what was happening? Natsuki must have connected the space in front of her with the space behind her, allowing the Araster cannon to pass through her body and into the space behind her. Hence, this created a scene where the Araster cannon shot through Natsuki's body and into the sky, as if shooting at an illusion. It was impossible to defend against. It directly shook the space and produced an impact attack. It was a teleportation skill that could deflect all long-range attacks. Furthermore, if a physical attack was launched directly at the target would be able to teleport away and dodge the attack. In addition, once bound, even mana would be isolated, making it impossible to break free from the discipline lock. The petite girl in front of him, who had the appearance and height of a 10-year-old girl, was simply an invincible existence. How were they supposed to fight? The fighting spirit in the hearts of Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, and the others gradually faded away. What replaced it was a feeling of helplessness. Do you know how useless you are? As if she had seen through their thoughts, Natsuki mercilessly spoke with an indifferent tone. Then, you should withdraw, no. The battle intent in Charlotte's heart that was gradually fading was filled with determination as she spoke resolutely. If I don't bring you all back, I will never back down. Me too. It was rare for Flay to raise her voice to the point of shouting. I will not allow you all to kill the dean. Is there any point in saying this now? Lei Zhen's sharp gaze swept toward Natsuki. Since we are here, we will not withdraw until we achieve our goal. Is that so? Natsuki nodded her head. She didn't change her mind at all. She didn't say anything. Then there's nothing we can do. It's about time for me to lose my patience. However, what replied to Natsuki was a voice that seemed to carry weight. It caused Charlot, Flay and Lei Zhen's hearts to tremble. No. I have already lost my patience. Wu Yan walked forward with Ikaros, Astria, Agrora, and Cannon. His wine-red eyes emotionlessly swept across Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, Yaya, Sigmund, and the others. Under that emotionless gaze, Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, and the others felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their shoulders. In the calm before the storm, they couldn't help but hold their breaths. No matter what, you all refuse to withdraw? In midair, Natsuki melted into the void and appeared beside Wu Yan. Ikaros, Astria, Agrora, and Cannon also stood behind Wu Yan in a row. Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, and the others felt their hearts sink when they saw the 5 young ladies of different sizes wearing the same white knight uniform with red edges. Just Natsuki alone was enough to make the 3 of them miserable. They couldn't even touch her. With the addition of the others, their already slim chance of victory was infinitely close to 0. It was only at this moment that Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, and the others realized how much pressure this person before them could bring them. It was just as Charlot and Kimberly said, Wu Yan's strength was on a completely different level compared to them. Facing an enemy like this, whether it's Charlotte, Flay, or Raisin, they all felt a deep sense of helplessness. They have practiced with Wu Yan more than once and they have a certain level of understanding of him. They couldn't win. There was no way they could win against this person. However, even if they couldn't win, they had to stop him. I have already said. Charlot looked at Wu Yan with eyes that seemed to be burning with flames. I will not let you bear all the consequences. Hearing those words, Wu Yan lowered his head and remained silent. However, Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune felt a strong sense of danger in their hearts. Then, I will force you to leave the stage right here. In an instant, a raging wave of magical power surged out of Wu Yan's body along with his powerful words. Bang! The magical power split into several portions and flowed into Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Agrora, and Cannon. Sigmund. Everyone. Yaya. At the same time, the sense of danger in Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune's hearts exploded. The three of them shouted themselves hoarse at the same time. But it was a pity that the three of them were destined to return empty-handed. Whoosh! A burst of white cold mist suddenly swept out in all directions like a gale, shrouding an area of several hundred meters in radius. Wherever the white, chilly mist passed through, a layer of hard ice formed on the ground made of rocks in less than a second. The surrounding trees were also slowly covered in a layer of ice starting from their roots. Not long after, the ground and trees as far as the eye could see had all turned into ice. The entire stage had turned into a world of ice. Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune only had time to change their expressions for a moment before Sigmund, Yaya, and the Gagarmth series of automatons froze from their feet. Not good. Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune were alarmed. Buzz! Suddenly, ripples appeared in the surrounding space, and chains suffused with purple light extended out. They were like venomous snakes, responding to each other. Amidst a series of clanging sounds, the chains shot toward Charlot's group in the center. Sigmund, Yaya, and the 5 Garms of different sizes wanted to dodge the chains. However, their feet were already covered in ice. They were unable to move at all. Ding! In the next second, the chains of discipline wrapped around Sigmund, Yaya, and the 5 Garms of different sizes, binding the group of automatons. Sigmund. Everyone. Yaya. Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune's expressions changed again and again. Magic power surged out of their bodies. They immediately wanted to send their magic power into the bodies of the automatons. Buzz! However, the moment the magic power surged out of their bodies, a spherical protective barrier made of crystals enveloped the 3 of them and floated into the air. It was the Aegis, Absolute Defense Circle. The entire process took less than 10 seconds. The outcome was decided. Chapter 1679. Whoosh! The cold mist was still blowing, and the ground and trees in the surroundings were constantly turning into solid ice amidst a series of cracking noises. Sigmund, Ye, and the automaton of the Garms series had their feet or limbs covered by the ice layer that extended from the frozen ground. Their bodies were also bound by the lock of discipline, so they could not move at all. As for Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune, the 3 of them, they were trapped in the Aegis barrier. No matter how they pounded on the barrier of the Aegis barrier, they were unable to do anything to it. The 3 puppets, Charlot, Flay, and Raisin, were imprisoned. Sigmund, Yaya, and the automaton of the Garms series were restrained. Coupled with the fact that the automatons were still wrapped in the commandment lock, that flowed with the moon's magic power, which could repel external magic power, the connection between the 3 puppeteers and the automatons had been severed. This battle had ended without any suspense. Looking at Charlotte, Flay, and Raisin who were trapped inside the Aegis barrier, Wu Yan retracted most of his mana. He also watched as the automatons whose limbs were encased in ice and whose bodies were bound by chains of discipline, leaving only the magic power to maintain the Aegis, Absolute Defense Circle, and the lock of discipline. I've spent quite a bit of time with you all. After taking a glance at Charlot and the others, Wu Yan turned around. All of you can stay here for the time being, Yen. Don't go. Charlot knocked on the Aegis barrier as he cried out with tears streaming down his face. I beg of you. Don't go. You don't have to do this. Wu Yen did not even turn his head around. He merely let his monotonous voice spread to every corner of the scene and into everyone's ears. No matter what, we've only known each other for less than a month. Is it worth it for you to risk your life for me? I should be the one asking you that. Charlotte couldn't stop her tears no matter how hard she tried. She could only bite her lips and yell. We've only known each other for a month. Am I worth it for you to give up everything to save me? Felix framed me. When he planned to give me a fatal blow, you appeared and saved me. You exposed Felix's true colors. Now, my little sister is being held hostage. I should be the one being used. Charlot's cheeks were soaked with tears. But now, you're shouldering everything for me. Is this worth it? I don't know if it's worth it or not. I only know that I shouldn't do this. I'll feel very uncomfortable. Wu Yen turned his head slightly and looked at Charlot. You've said it yourself. The one being used might be you. If you were me, wouldn't you do the same? When the time comes, we'll switch sides. I'll be the one to stop you and persuade you to go back. Will you listen to me? Even though he was the one asking the question, Wu Yen shook his head and answered it himself. No, you won't. You'll definitely dig yourself into a corner and not even struggle. Instead, you'll sink deep into it and be stubborn. If that's the case, why don't you let me finish it for you? Isn't that better? It's definitely not good. Charlot shouted without hesitation. She was so agitated that she put her hand on the barrier of the Aegis. You're right. If I were you, I'd be more stubborn than you. If you come to stop me, I won't listen to you either. But you'll still stop me, won't you? That's why. I have to stop you. Charlotte's beautiful eyes were completely red and swollen. She was crying and laughing at the same time as she said those words. Who told me to like you? This time, Wu Yen was truly stunned. Not only Wu Yen, everyone except Sigmund, including Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Agarola, and Canon were all stunned by what they saw. You. Wu Yen looked at Charlot, who was crying and laughing at the same time with a bitter smile. Is that a confession? Yeah, do you hate me? Charlot had a self-deprecating smile on her tear-stained face. Do you hate the flirtatious me who was in love with Felix not long ago and now I'm saying that I like you? I don't hate you. Wu Yan's bitter smile deepened. Or rather, I don't know what to do. I don't care if you hate me or don't know what to do. I just want you to listen to me this once. Charlot wiped her face and looked at Wu Yen with her swollen eyes. You can't kill the dean. You cannot go and kill the academy head. Flay also spoke. She had a pleading expression on her face. There must be another way. Since you are so strong, use it to resist. Raisin clenched his fists and said firmly. I don't believe that the Kingsford family or any faction on the same level as the Kingsford family can do anything to you with your strength. Wu Yen, Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Agarola, Canon, and the others all fell silent. Yen. Charlot, Flay, and Lejeune spoke with hope in their voices. Wu Yen. Sigmund shouted. Wu Yen, San. Yaya called out. Wu Yen heard every single one of them calling out to him. He felt touched but also helpless at the same time. As expected, these guys are just foolishly doing their jobs. Right at this moment, an emotionless mechanical voice echoed from not far away. Let's go back. Scarlet Taze, following this voice, at a corner of this snowy world, a space suddenly distorted. It was like an invisible black hole that kept on spinning. Then, several figures were spat out. It was a group of a man and 4 young girls. The young girls were wearing black formal attire. They were about the same height. There was a large word written on a piece of cloth hanging in front of their faces. They were holding weapons of different styles, but all of them were bright red in color. The man was wearing the academy's uniform. He was wearing a cloak and a silver mask that only revealed one eye and part of his body below his nose. Seeing the masked man leading the four young girls, Charlot and Flay revealed shocked expressions. As for Lei Zhen, it was as if he had seen his enemy. His eyes were about to spurt flames. Magnus. That's right. The person who came was the #1 student in the history of the Walpurgis Academy. He was, without a doubt, the strongest existence among the students. His code name was Marshal Magnus. As for the four young girls behind Magnus, they were naturally Magnus' most famous and also his greatest reliance. They were a group of 6 automatons that had the ability to fight against 13 people. They were a squadron. Magnus. Wu Yan raised his head and looked at Magnus, who was leading the 4 young girls. He smiled. Since you've appeared here, it means that you've become the Dean's Guard, right? The Dean's Guard? Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, and the others all looked at Magnus in surprise. It's only temporary. Magnus stared at Wu Yan with his only exposed eye. As long as you give up on assassinating the Dean, my mission will be completed. I won't have to carry out this boring duty anymore. It's rare to hear such direct thoughts from you. Wu Yan curled his lips. Since you're bored, why don't you just give up? I've already said that this is my duty. Magnus said calmly. It's not my wish to be the Dean's Guard. So, step down, Scarlet Eyes, oh? Wu Yan's lips curled up. What if I say that I must see the Dean? Magnus suddenly raised his head. Then I'll beat you back. Chapter 1680. The temperature in the air seemed to have dropped. An indescribable tension filled the air, causing beads of sweat to appear on the foreheads of Charlot, Flay, and Raisin, who were watching from the side. The two parties in the confrontation were not ordinary people. One was the #1 marshal in the history of the Walpurgis Royal School of Mechanics, Magnus. The other was a freshman who had entered the school for less than a month. Before he even entered the school, he had suppressed Magnus and defeated the 4th-ranked Felix with overwhelming strength, Wu Yan. Both of them also possessed extremely high-performance automatons that were capable of fighting against 13 people on their own. They formed a squadron of automatons. Regardless of which side it was, Kimberly had personally evaluated them. They were no longer on the same level as the students of the academy. They were definitely existences at the level of demon kings. If these two existences were to really fight, who would not be nervous watching from the side? At the very least, it was not only Charlot, Flay, and Raisin who were nervous. Even Sigmund, Ye, and the group of automatons from the Dagarm series were holding their breaths as they waited. They were afraid that they would accidentally break the tension that symbolized the stalemate and trigger a great battle. In such a tense atmosphere, the 4 girls standing behind Magnus leaped forward. They arrived in front of Magnus. They wore flower-like black formal attire. There were Chinese characters written clearly on the cloth on their faces. They were respectively Fire, Sickle, Jade, and Dragonfly. Those were some of the names of the 4 girls who were part of the squadron. The names of the 4 automatons standing in front of Magnus were respectively Fire, Sickle, Jade Worm, and Dragonfly. At this time, Huazuo was holding a red dagger that looked like a sharp thorn in each hand. Yuxia was holding a long and large sickle with a similarly red blade. Yuchong was holding a red longsword, while Gu Fei was holding a red single-edged battle axe with a red blade. The 4 girls from the squadron raised the weapons in their hands as though they were worried that Magnus would be suddenly attacked. It was aimed at Wu Yan. Although he couldn't see their expressions behind the curtains, he could tell that they were hostile towards him. However, Wu Yan turned a blind eye to the hostility of the 4 girls. He frowned. The squadron that Magnus led was made up of 6 automatons, in the form of young girls. This was something that everyone in the Walpurgis Wangli School of Engineering knew. However, Now, there were only 4 people by Magnus' side, and the other 2 were nowhere to be seen. After pondering for a moment, Wu Yan understood. It seems you left 2 automatons by the dean's side. Hearing this, Magnus' automatons all tensed up. Magnus said indifferently, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. Just in case of an emergency, can I take this as your declaration?" Wu Yan chuckled. "Take it as your declaration that you think you can defeat me with just 4 automatons." This sentence caused the already tense atmosphere to become as tense as a string that was on the verge of breaking at any time. However, it was indeed so. Since Magnus became the dean's guard, it was impossible for him to not know that the assassin was Wu Yan. Since he was here, it was impossible for him to not know that Wu Yan was here. Even though he knew that Wu Yan was here, Magnus still only brought 4 automatons with him. It was reasonable to assume that Magnus was confident that he could defeat Wu Yan with 4 automatons. Magnus didn't seem to have any intention of refuting, and said in a soft voice, "It's fine, that guy." Charlot, Flay, and Ryzen looked at Magnus with an unfriendly expression. On the other hand, Wu Yan looked at Magnus for a while and sighed. Fine. After saying that, Wu Yan withdrew the aegis that imprisoned Charlot, Flay, and Ryzen, as well as the chains of discipline that restrained Sigmund, Yaya, and the Garm series automatons. The 3 aegis that imprisoned Charlot, Flay, and Flay immediately dissipated, causing the 3 of them to fall to the ground. The chains of discipline that restrained the automatons also withdrew into the spatial ripples and disappeared. I won't say something like, "Since you only brought out 4 automatons, I will also bring out 4 automatons to fight you." Wu Yan chuckled in a cheerful manner. "After all, I also want to try a battle where I can have my companions fight together." After saying that, buzz. Wu Yan closed his eyes. Ripples of magic power reverberated around him, transforming into the purest magic power that poured into the bodies of the young ladies around him. The phenomenon of magic power wasn't very strong. It didn't cause the atmosphere to rub against each other and cause wind waves. However, it was extremely condensed. In terms of quantity, perhaps it wasn't that outstanding. However, in terms of quality, the magic power that Wu Yan released this time was as different as heaven and earth compared to before. This caused Magnus' eyes that had been calm all this while to narrow. He withdrew his hand from his cloak and extended it toward the 4 young ladies before him. Ripples of magic power reverberated. Upon receiving Magnus' magic power, the 4 young ladies lifted their heads with all their might. Then, their figures blurred and they all disappeared. Charlot, Fry, and Lei Zhen, who had just landed on the ground in a sorry state, witnessed this scene and widened their eyes on the spot. However, Wu Yan kept his eyes closed. He didn't move at all. It's as if he didn't notice anything. At the next moment, Fire Droop, Sickle Cutter, Jade Beetle, and Dragonfly, the 4 young lady automatons of the squadron, suddenly appeared in a flash. Not only that, but they also appeared around Wu Yan with his eyes shut. Fire Droop and Dragonfly appeared before Wu Yan, while Jade Beetle and Sickle Cutter appeared behind Wu Yan. The 4 young ladies abandoned Natsuki's group, raised their weapons, and stabbed at Wu Yan mercilessly. Magnus actually attacked the puppeteer directly. This was considered a violation of the rules in a night-gathering battle. Once it appeared, the attacker would be disqualified from the battle instantly. However, in a regular battle, attacking the puppeteer directly was the normal way to do it. After all, compared to the powerful automaton, the puppeteer was simply too weak. Without the magic power provided by the puppeteer, the automaton was nothing more than scrap metal. It couldn't even activate its magic circuit and attack. Even the bandolier had limited magic power. Naturally, eliminating the puppeteer in advance was the most efficient way to end the battle and obtain victory. Unfortunately, this method was destined to not work on Wu Yan. Clang! Fire Droop, Sickle Cutter, Jade Beetle, and Dragonfly, the 4 young ladies stabbed at Wu Yan's body with their weapons. The sound of metal colliding echoed in the surroundings. The 4 young ladies felt as if their weapons had stabbed into steel and couldn't move forward. The screen in front of them flipped open, revealing the four young ladies' shocked expressions. Because in front of the four young ladies' weapons, a translucent barrier made of crystals appeared around Wu Yan's body and blocked the four young ladies' attacks. Through the translucent barrier, Fire Droop and Dragonfly, who were attacking from the front, could clearly see it. A mocking expression appeared on Wu Yan's face. Then, in front of Magnus, a laser lightsaber pierced through the air and stabbed at Magnus' throat. Chapter 1681. In a proper battle, attacking the puppeteer directly is the most common method. During the night meeting, since it is a test of the puppeteer's ability, it is inevitable that the puppeteer would be defeated before they could display their full potential. Therefore, the night meeting strictly forbids direct attacks between the puppeteers. However, in a proper battle, it is common knowledge that the puppeteer must be dealt with first. Therefore, even in class, the professor in charge of teaching would mention this method more than once. How could Wu Yan not take note of this? After all, this isn't a night meeting where friendship comes first and competition comes second. This is a real battle. Magnus was the #1 student in the history of the Walpurgis Royal Mechanical School, and with his cold personality, he definitely wouldn't be stingy with using conventional methods in a real battle. Wu Yan already predicted that Magnus would order his squadron to attack him. Even if he didn't, Ikaros wouldn't just stand there and watch Wu Yan get attacked. With Ikaros' Aegis, Absolute Defense Circle, he doesn't need to worry about his own safety. Taking advantage of this, Wu Yan waited for Magnus to order his automaton to attack before he made his move. Of course, this so-called action was nothing more than dividing his mana into 3 parts. One part is injected into Ikaros' body. Let Ikaros cast Aegis, Absolute Defense Circle. Another part is injected into Natsuki's body so she can teleport. The last portion was injected into Astria's body. Through Natsuki's teleportation ability, Astria was teleported in front of Magnus and launched an attack on him. At this moment, Magnus' entire squadron had been used to attack him. He doesn't have a single guard around him. If Astria's attack hits, then the #1 student of the academy will be subdued by Wu Yan for the second time. Of course, that is if Astria's attack hits. Clang! Just like when the squadron attacked Wu Yan. The sword in Astria's hand that was aimed at Magnus' throat was met with the sound of metal clashing against metal. This was because one of the girls from the squadron had suddenly appeared in front of Magnus, using the blade of a large scythe. He managed to block Astria's attack. It was the girl with the word scythe written on the screen in front of her. It was Scythe Cutter who was beside Wu Yan a second ago. Astria flapped her wings as she retreated to Wu Yan's side. She looked at the sickle that appeared out of nowhere in front of Magnus and blocked her attack with a look of surprise. That girl. When did she appear? When did she move? Even Astria didn't notice. The other girls of the squadron also retreated to Magnus' side and stood together with Sickle Cutter. His expression was as surprised as Astria's. Just like how Astria didn't notice Scythe Cutter's movement, the girls from the squadron didn't notice when Astria appeared in front of Magnus. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. At the moment when the young ladies on both sides were astonished, Charlot, Flay and Leijin discovered the reason for this. That girl from the squadron. Charlot looked at Sickle Chia in a daze. Just like Natsuki, she can perform magic related to space. Spatial teleportation. Flay stared at Scythe Cutter in shock. Her magic circuit is spatial teleportation? Spatial magic. Leijin's expression also showed that it was difficult to deal with. Does Magnus also have an automaton, with such high-level magic circuits around him? Magnus turned his gaze to Natsuki after hearing the conversation between Charlotte and the others. Your automaton also has the magic circuit of space transference? Since there's the word also, it proves that the magic circuit installed in your automaton is indeed space transfer, right? Compared to Magnus, Wu Yan only glanced at Scythe Cutter and smiled. However, don't compare my Natsuki to your automaton. Natsuki's magic isn't as simple as that, also. He gathered the mana around him into his palm and extended it towards Astria. A dazzling mana aura rippled out from his palm. My Astria isn't any worse than Natsuki. Scorching mana flowed into Astria's body, causing her chakras to glow with a layer of dark light. Then, Astria lowered her body and shot towards Magnus like a rocket. Magnus immediately raised his other hand. Mana rippled from both hands as he poured mana into his automaton. With the support of the new mana, Huadaoun leaped up and stood in front of Magnus. She crossed her short swords and faced Astria, who was charging at her. Clang! In the next moment, the laser lightsaber and the short sword collided fiercely, creating a shockwave. There was also intense friction at the point of collision, causing sparks to fill the sky. Bzzz. At this time, a ripple appeared in the space beside Huachui. A chain with purple light on its surface suddenly flew out from it. It was like a whip as it was swung heavily and ruthlessly on Huazhuang's body. Boom! With a muffled sound, Huazhua didn't even have time to react. Her slender body was like a kite with a broken string as she was mercilessly sent flying. She smashed into the ground not far away and embedded herself into the stone layer, causing the entire ground to crack open. Astria had nothing to stop her now that Huapeng was knocked away. She levitated in the air and dashed towards Magnus. She swung her laser sword down towards Magnus' head with a clear vibrating sound. Bzzz. At this moment, the jade worm appeared in front of Magnus. She used her sickle to transfer the jade worm to Magnus. The jade worm didn't use its weapon to block the laser sword. Instead, it raised its empty hand and extended it towards Astria's laser sword. Under the watchful eyes of the audience, a formless energy appeared on the jade worm's hand like steam. It reached out and grabbed Astria's laser sword without fear. Then, the invisible energy enveloped Astria's laser lightsaber. It corroded the vibrating laser lightsaber like corrosive water. No. It wasn't corroded. It was absorbed. The laser sword's dazzling radiance turned into specks of starlight at a speed visible to the naked eye. They were absorbed by the jade worm's slender hand and dimmed down in the blink of an eye. Bang! The vibrating force was reduced to zero. Astria's laser sword dimmed and shattered like glass. Not only Astria, even Charlotte, Flay, and Raisin were shocked to the point their expressions changed. That's... Wu Yen frowned. It absorbed Astria's magic power? Yes. The jade worm absorbed the mana in Astria's body. Without the support of magic power, an automaton wouldn't be able to move. This is common knowledge. It's the same for Astria. Without the support of magic power, even though she wouldn't lose her ability to move, all of her attacks would be cancelled due to the restriction of the bracelet. Astria's Chrysor also lost its effect. There's no doubt that the jade worm's magic circuit is magic power absorption. By absorbing the opponent's magic power, not only can it weaken the opponent and deplete the opponent's magic power, it can also use the magic power to strengthen itself. Chapter 1682. Charlot, Fry, and Raisin looked at each other in dismay as they looked at the jade worm that had turned the Chrysor into starlight and was continuously absorbing it into its body, causing the magic ripples on the surface of its body to gradually strengthen. Even though the seizing magic isn't as powerful as the space magic, it's just as difficult to execute. After all, the seizing magic isn't something that belongs to the caster, it's magic power. It's common for the caster to reject the magic power after absorbing it into their body. That's why the seizing magic requires the caster to control it with high precision. Even if the seizing magic is inside an automaton, it's still necessary for the caster to control the automaton. If the space series of magic spells were difficult to activate in theory, then the seizing series of magic spells were difficult to control in theory. However, Magnus didn't just let the jade worm absorb Astria's magic power at lightning speed and convert it into his own magic power. He also controlled the other three automatons as if he was taking a stroll in the park. Among them, Sickle Cutter was an automaton that carried the spatial series of magic circuits. It's easy to see how skillful Magnus is in magic. How skillful is he? Astria's mana was being sucked dry by the jade worm. She couldn't even maintain her chrysor anymore. Magnus reached out with his other hand. Mana surged out of his palm. Bzzz, next second, the space behind Astria vibrated and ripples started forming in the air. Sickle Cutter emerged from the space behind Astria and aimed at Astria's head with her scythe. She sliced through the air and a sonic boom sounded. She drew an arc of light. Sickle Cutter aimed for Astria's head. Bzzz. However, just as the scythe was about to hit Astria, a crystal barrier appeared around Astria with an even louder rumble. Ikaros Aegis, Absolute Defense Circle. Clang. The scythe landed heavily on the surface of the Aegis. It created a ripple of light. However, it could not do anything to the Aegis, Absolute Defense Circle. Sickle Cutter's magic circuit is advanced. But spatial shift can't increase Sickle Cutter's attack power or the power of her scythe. It can't do anything to the Aegis. It's not surprising. But that doesn't mean Jade Worm can't do anything to the Aegis. Jade Worm placed her hand on the Aegis. Invisible energy gushed out from her slender palm and absorbed all the magic power from the Aegis. Bam! The surface of the Aegis quickly dimmed and shattered. Bzzz, then, Firefall, who was knocked away by the lock of discipline, appeared in front of Astria with the help of Scythe Slash. Hataru's cold gaze landed on Astria's beautiful face. His body exploded with a scorching heat. His movement was so fast that it was impossible to see his movements clearly. The short sword in his hand sliced through the air like a bolt of lightning and sliced towards Astria's neck. That merciless strike that caused even the air to distort was clearly not achieved by just relying on that sharp dagger. The strength behind that strike was definitely not small. If it landed on a rock, it would probably be enough to shatter the rock that was larger than a person. The magic of the automaton, called Fire Droplet, could not only produce heat, but it could also increase her strength. Ignoring the heat, Firefall's magic is almost the same as Yaya's King Kong's strength. Even if Astria is an omnipotent angel, she wouldn't feel good if she got hit by Firefall's attack. Whoosh! Unfortunately, when Firefall's attack was about to hit Astria, a sharp ice spike pierced through the air and brushed past Astria's shoulder. It met Firefall's short sword head-on. Bam! The icy cold spike clashed with the burning dagger and exploded between Astria and Huchuang. The impact of the explosion knocked Firefall, Sickle Cutter, and Jade Worm away from Astria. Astria finally broke free from Jade Worm's mana absorption effect. She regained her mana and a laser beam shot out from the hilt of her chrysor. Ha! Astria took advantage of the fact that Firefall, Sickle Cutter, and Jade Worm were knocked away by the explosion to appear in front of Magnus. She raised her chrysor above her head. Just as Astria was about to slash down with her lightsaber, the last member of Magnus' squadron, Dragonfly, appeared in front of Astria and blocked her path. The moment Dragonfly appeared in front of Astria, mana surged out of Dragonfly's body. It activated the magic circuit in Dragonfly's body. However, no one could tell what kind of magic it was. Dragonfly didn't do anything. He allowed Astria's chrysor to land a merciless slash on his body. Bam! However, Dragonfly didn't suffer any damage from the chrysor attack. Instead, he sent a shockwave through his body and landed on Astria's body with a dull thud. Astria groaned as if she hit a wall. Her voluptuous body was sent flying. It took her a lot of effort to regain her balance. She relied on her wings to stay afloat in the air. However, her body looked like it was engulfed in flames. Light smoke rose from her body and charred marks appeared on her skin. What's wrong? Charlotte and Flay were at a loss. What happened? What happened? Astria was hit by something. Leijin stared at Dragonfly, who was standing in front of Magnus with an incomprehensible look on his face. But, what hit Astria? What? It wasn't a shockwave. If it was just a simple shockwave, then Magnus, who was less than a meter away from the dragonfly, should have been hit as well. However, Magnus was fine. Astria was the only one who was hit by the shockwave. However, everyone here is a skilled puppet user. Even though they didn't know what kind of attack it was, they could roughly guess what it was. It was obvious that Dragonfly didn't put up any defense against Astria's full-powered slash. However, Dragonfly's body wasn't damaged by the shockwave. Instead, Astria was the one who was hit by an unknown attack. That look, it was as if, I see. Wu Yan's wine-red eyes met Magnus' only exposed eye. He absorbed the shockwave from Astria's attack and reflected it back. He absorbed the shockwave from an attack and reflected it back. Charlot and Flay were greatly alarmed. Lei Zhen even cried out in alarm. Is there such a magic trick? Magnus didn't answer. He was still looking at Wu Yan. There wasn't a hint of emotion in his eyes. It was as if Wu Yan was the only person in the world standing in front of him. However, Magnus' silence confirmed Wu Yan's words. Dragonfly has a magic circuit that can reflect an attack back to its target. Charlotte, Flay, and Lei Zhen couldn't help but shiver. Their hearts had also sunk by half. If such a magic trick really exists, do they have any chance of winning against Magnus? Chapter 1683. At this point, among the 6 automaton units that Magnus formed, 4 of the magic circuits that had always been unknown were exposed. The sickle slash had the spatial transference circuit. The jade worm had the magic absorption circuit. The fire droplet circuit could be used on one's own body to strengthen one's body. It could even control the heat generated during the process. As for the dragonfly, it was a circuit that could bounce back any incoming attack. No matter which circuit it was, they were all high-level goods. And now, such a high-level magic circuit was not only installed in the body of the automaton, with excellent performance, but also owned by a single person. On top of that, this person was able to control each of the automatons with ease. This was Magnus, the person with the highest overall score in the history of the Valpurgis Royal Mechanical Academy. He was personally evaluated by Kimberly as having the power of a demon king. Just 4 automatons were enough to make one feel powerless, let alone the other 2 automatons. To be able to fight on par with such an opponent, one had to admit. Wu Yan's strength was so terrifying that it made one's hair stand on end. A magic that can be used on one's own body to strengthen one's body. It can even control the heat generated during the process. Wu Yan only frowned a little. Then, his furrowed brows relaxed as he looked at the fire droplet. Instead of saying that it can strengthen one's body, it can strengthen one's explosiveness and control the heat generated during the process. Not only can it strengthen one's explosiveness, it can also control the heat generated during the process. This is the so-called pressure, right? Pressure? Charlot, Flay, and Lei Zhen were slightly startled. Magnus stared straight at Wu Yan. After a while, he finally responded. The magic circuit of fire droplet is indeed pressure. By manipulating physical pressure, it acts on oneself. By using physical force, one can obtain outstanding explosiveness and durability. It can even control the heat generated during the process. Quite an excellent magic circuit. Wu Yan didn't deny it. His gaze landed on Astria, who was floating in the air with burnt marks all over her body. He raised his hand. He placed his hand on Cannon's shoulder, who had always been by his side. Mana flowed out from his hand and entered Cannon's body bit by bit. Cannon immediately understood. She clasped her hands in front of her chest and closed her eyes as if she was praying. A bright light shone from Charlot's body. It condensed into a beam of light that shot into the sky and landed on Astria's body. The charred marks on Astria's body disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Her skin returned to its original smooth state. This time, it was Magnus' turn to frown. Heal. That's right. Wu Yan admitted it. As long as it's not a fatal injury, it can be treated in a very short time. How about it? Not bad, right? Hearing this, Magnus' eyes began to ripple. Astria is an expert in close combat. Ikaros has an extremely sturdy defensive ability. Natsuki has excellent spatial manipulation. Agrora has a wide range of freezing abilities. Cannon, on the other hand, had terrifying healing abilities. Wuyan's automaton has all the necessary elements for close combat, ranged attack, support, defense, and healing. Compared to Magnus' squadron, Wuyan's squadron is much more suitable for combat. It was only at this moment that Magnus realized how troublesome his opponent was. This was the first time Magnus had felt so troubled by someone other than the dean of the Walpurgis Wangli School of Strategy. Little did they know that for the others, at least for Charlotte, Flay, and Raisin who were watching from the sidelines, Wuyan and Magnus aren't just difficult to deal with, they are almost invincible and undefeatable. Those two people. Lei Zhen's expression changed unpredictably. Do I really have a way to surpass them? Good. Flay muttered in a daze. Amazing, phew. Charlot let out a long sigh. His face was filled with anticipation. I hope Magnus can stop him from killing the dean. Unfortunately, this anticipation will soon be shattered. I admit that you are very strong, Magnus. Wu Yan sighed. So strong that I can't help but want to get serious. Hearing this, Magnus' eyes showed a stern expression for the first time. Are you trying to say that you haven't been serious since the beginning? If I wanted to be serious, I wouldn't have just sent Astria to attack you. Wu Yan mocked. Although my Ikaros is only in charge of defense and Cannon is only in charge of healing, the two of them won't participate in the attack. However, Natsuki and Agurola aren't any weaker than Astria. Since the beginning, I only sent them to support Astria, right? Magnus stared at Wu Yan for a long time before he spoke. Didn't you say you wouldn't go easy on me just because I only send out 4 automatons? I'm not going to fight you with 4 automatons just because you only send out 4. I want to see if I can get my comrades to fight at least once. Wu Yan corrected him and he grinned. And now, my companions have already attacked. Unfortunately, you didn't manage to force them to use their full strength. No one said we have to force the opponent to use their full strength in a battle. Magnus said coldly. A battle is only a method to determine the victor. Isn't that even more regrettable? Wu Yan looked at Magnus with a smile that didn't look like a smile. With Ikaros' aegis, you can't hurt me at all. Even if your automaton can absorb mana, I can use Natsuki's power to retreat. On the other hand, with Cannon here, unless you have a one-hit kill, you won't be able to take down a single person on my side. Of course, if your other 2 automatons can use magic to deal with situations like this, then it's a different story. Wu Yan shrugged. Unfortunately, you only have 4 automatons with you. You can't do anything to me. As soon as he finished speaking, there was dead silence. Charlot, Flay, and Lei Zhen sighed in their hearts. In the entire academy, Wu Yan is probably the only person who can confidently say, "You can't do anything to me," to Magnus. Magnus' automatons seemed to be a little unconvinced, and each of them released a shocking amount of hostility. Magnus stared at Wu Yan. Then, he opened his mouth. Do you think I don't have any other methods? I don't know if you do or not, and I'm not interested to know. After all, you've wasted too much of my time. Wu Yan smiled. So, I won't be accompanying you anymore. Wu Yan's body burst into a ball of magical flames and he channeled all of his magical power into Natsuki's body. Magnus, Charlot, Flay, and Raisin thought that Wu Yan was going to use teleportation to leave this place. However, they were wrong. Natsuki raised the lace fan in her hand and pointed it forward. Bam! An invisible force struck Magnus, Firefall, Sickle, Jade Worm, and Dragonfly's heads like a club. They staggered and swayed drunkenly. Not good. Magnus clutched his head, and just as he said that, a spatial ripple appeared behind him. A chain extended out and wrapped around his body. Then, with a pull, Magnus was pulled into the spatial ripple. In a short instant, the spatial ripples dissipated, and Magnus disappeared from the spot. No one knew where he went. Chapter 1684. Master. As soon as they recovered from their dizziness, Firefall, Sickle, Jade Worm, and Dragonfly saw the scene of Magnus being dragged into the space ripple by the lock of discipline. They immediately exclaimed in unison. I'm not against automatons being too human-like, but this is indeed a rare weakness for Natsuki. Wu Yen shook his head regretfully and glanced at the automatons of the squadron. And then? Do you want to fight me without a puppet user? The automatons of the squadron took a step back and looked at Wu Yen cautiously. Magnus' squadron was made up of bandoliers. That was why the automaton of the squadron could generate mana on its own to a certain extent to support itself in battle. However, the amount of mana they could generate was incomparable to that of a human, even the weakest among the puppeteers and magicians. Moreover, without the puppeteers' control, the power of the automatons would be greatly reduced. Therefore, if the automatons of the squadron were to fight Wu Yen without Magnus, they would definitely be killed in a short period of time. Of course, it would be fine if they were killed, but if they were captured alive, that would be the real problem. After all, in the automaton series, the value of each automaton in the squadron was almost comparable to a warship. Their structure and magic circuit would definitely be of great interest to many factions. By then, it would not be hard to imagine the automaton of the squadron. They would either become the enemy of their own master or become an automaton. Or they would become a commodity. Or worse, they might even become an experimental subject and be dissected for research on their structure and magic circuit. Mass production. That would be a fate worse than death. Therefore, Magnus had warned them again and again. If they were captured alive, then the automatons of the squadron would have to find a way to destroy themselves. Although it was very cruel. It was also very cruel, but it was indeed a way to escape. However, the automatons of the squadron hadn't been captured yet, and the opponent didn't seem to have any intention of capturing the automatons of the squadron. By the way, Magnus is still bound by a weapon called the Lock of Discipline. If the magic power flowing on it doesn't fade, not only will it not disappear, it will also prevent Magnus' magic power from being transmitted outwards. Wu Yen kindly reminded them. In other words, even if Magnus wants to rely on the connection between him and you to inform you of his current location, he has no other means other than sound. And now that Magnus is bound, if he encounters any danger, he won't be able to resist. The expressions of the automatons of the squadron behind the curtain finally changed. Without hesitating for too long, the automatons of the squadron chose to prioritize their master's life without hesitation. Under the magic of the sickle, they collectively teleported and disappeared on the spot. Quite obedient. Wu Yen curled his lips. He turned around and wanted to leave with the group of girls. Wait! Charlotte, Flay, and Ryzen were shocked. They raised their feet and chased after them. However, not long after, the three of them stopped in their tracks as if they had braked. Because, in front of the three of them, a person appeared. His back was straight, and his short silver hair was combed back. He looked very agile. He wore tinted glasses on his face, and his eyes were as sharp as blades. He was wearing a deacon's suit, and his hands were behind his back. Sensing the arrival of this person, Wu Yen immediately stopped. He turned around and sneered. You're finally willing to come out. I thought you'd be hiding at the side and peeking. You're called Ryzen. The Granville family's deacon is indeed very outstanding. However, he's not perfect. If I have to point out a flaw, it would be that he doesn't like to interfere in other people's battles. Ryzen spoke without turning his head. The reason I came out now is because I don't want anyone to waste Mr. Wu Yan's time, you. Flay took a step back and spoke with a timid expression. Who are you? The Granville family. Ryzen muttered and looked at Ryzen. Could it be that you're the power behind the scenes that captured Angriette as a hostage and used Wu Yan to kill the school head? You're the one who captured Angriette as a hostage and used Yan? Charlotte revealed a hateful and ruthless expression. Her magic power began to surge like a gust of wind. Are you in cahoots with the Kingsford family? You're really smart. However, people who are too smart usually don't live long. Ryzen openly admitted. However, his eyes behind his colored glasses turned to Wu Yan. I'll deal with these people. Mr. Wu Yan, you should go to the school head. Wu Yan didn't say anything. He only looked at Ryzen from afar. After a while, he glanced at the forest beside him and smiled imperceptibly. He turned around and led the group of girls toward the school head's residence. Yen! Charlotte shouted. She raised her foot and seemed like she wanted to chase after Ryzen. Whoosh! However, with a sound that sounded like a gentle breeze, Charlotte's vision turned black. A tall figure suddenly appeared in front of her, and like a whip, he lashed out with a kick. Bang! Just as the kick was about to hit Charlotte, it landed heavily on a pair of wings that had suddenly appeared in front of Charlotte. Roar! Sigmund used his wings to block Ryzen's kick and roared. Then, his dragon claw violently smashed down on Ryzen's body. Bang! The huge dragon claw smashed the ground into smithereens, and the ground around the dragon claw also cracked inch by inch. However, the dragon claw only smashed the ground. It didn't hit Ryzen. A second before the dragon claw smashed down, Ryzen used complete vibration control to increase his speed. Like a phantom, he dodged the dragon claw. When Ryzen appeared again, he was above Flay. He raised his leg and smashed it down on Flay's head. Flay! Charlotte and Ryzen cried out in alarm. Ah! Flay also cried out in alarm. She couldn't help but close her eyes. Right when Ryzen's kick was about to land on Flay's head, a cold and indifferent voice filled with killing intent resounded from the forest beside them. Spin. Cherub, I'm ready. Following a mechanical response, the sound of something breaking through the air resounded through the entire area. Whoosh. Following the sound of something breaking through the air, a large sword with scorching air swirling around it shot out explosively from the forest beside them. It cut through the air pressure and slashed toward Ryzen. Logically, as Ryzen was in midair, he shouldn't be able to adjust his body. However, Ryzen's body seemed to have stopped in midair. He stopped moving without the slightest bit of inertia. Then, he forcibly changed his direction and dodged to the side. The large sword swept past Flay's head. However, upon seeing the large sword, Flay cried out in pleasant surprise. Loki! Loki slowly walked out from the forest beside them. He looked at Ryzen, who had landed on the ground, with a cold expression. Although I am modest and tolerant, there are 3 types of people that I cannot forgive no matter what. Those who order me around, those who resist me, and those who want to harm my older sister, those filthy bastards who came from God knows where. After saying those words, boundless magic power burst forth from Loki's body. It also burst forth from Charlotte, Flay and Ryzen. Faced with such a situation, Ryzen simply laughed with disdain. Chapter 1685. Bam! Wu Yan, who was leading the group of girls toward the dean's mansion, did not turn around because of the explosion behind him. It was as if he was not worried about killing Charlot, Flay, Lei Zhen, and the others. He continued walking forward. There was no need to worry. Zhen's body was equipped with the complete vibration control magic circuit. Although Wu Yan had belittled the complete vibration control magic circuit as if it was worthless, that was only when compared to the vector manipulation magic circuit. A magic circuit that could control vectors was very powerful even if it could only be used on one's body. With the complete vibration control ability and Zhen's excellent performance, even if Charlot, Flay, and Lei Zhen joined forces, they might not be able to defeat Zhen. If they were not careful, Charlot, Flay, and Lei Zhen might lose their lives in Zhen's hands. However, that was under the condition that Loki did not show up. Loki was stronger than any one of the three, Fry, or Lei Zhen. If they were to fight Zhen, Loki might be at a disadvantage, but that was all. If he joined forces with Charlot, Flay, and Lei Zhen, it would not be difficult to force Zhen to retreat. Therefore, after noticing that Loki was here, Wu Yan did not say anything. He led the group of girls and left. Ignoring the explosions behind him, Wu Yan led the group of girls through the forest and into the open space where their field of vision had widened. Then, they continued walking forward and arrived at the place where the guards were frozen in ice flowers. The dean's mansion was not far behind the ice flowers. However, when they passed through the huge ice flowers and walked into the invisible spirit formation that enveloped the dean's residence, the spirit formation of the spirit formation of the spirit formation of the spirit formation of the spirit formation, Wu Yan and the group of girls stopped in their tracks. In front of them was a road paved with white stone bricks. At the end of the road, a building that was comparable to an ordinary school's gymnasium in terms of size, and height stood there. It did not look luxurious. However, it was much more eye-catching than a villa. That was the dean's mansion. However, Wu Yan and the group of girls did not stop because of the appearance of the dean's mansion. The reason why they stopped was because there was a person standing in front of the mansion. In the middle of the road paved with stone bricks, there was a burly figure. He wore a neat suit, had a thick mustache, and dark skin. He looked like a soldier. To be honest, I'm very surprised, as if he had been waiting for a long time. The burly figure raised his head and looked forward with a pair of bold eyes. Although I know you're much stronger than ordinary students, I didn't expect that even Magnus could not stop you. Shouldn't I be the one who should be surprised? Wu Yan stepped forward and he stood in front of the girls. His wine-red eyes flashed with a sharp glint. After all, known as the strongest magician of the 19th century, the person with the highest authority in the Walpurgis Royal College of Mechanics, the dean of the college, Edward Walpurgis Rutherford, came here personally to welcome me. Mistakes must be punished and merits must be rewarded. This is my most basic principle as the dean. The dean said with a smile. To be able to defeat Magnus isn't something that just anyone can do. It's necessary to give you some rewards, so, Dean, your so-called reward is to obediently come out and let me kill you? Wu Yan sneered. Don't tell me you don't know that I'm here to kill you. That's why I personally came here for this purpose. The principal said with an indifferent expression. Wu Yan, can you please back down like this? So your so-called reward is advice? Wu Yan sighed. That's really disappointing. Magnus is the treasure of the king of the Walpurgis Royal Mechanical Academy. The dean changed the topic. This academy exists to cultivate excellent puppeteers and export capable puppeteers to the outside world. Magnus is the #1 genius in the history of the academy. In the future. No, he is already a demon king. A talent like this is too precious. Originally, I thought that there was only one Magnus in the entire world. However, your appearance has truly surprised me. The dean nodded his head as if it was something serious. I don't want the academy to lose a treasure that can be compared to Magnus. You have the right to enjoy the same treatment as Magnus. How about you back down like this? I don't know what kind of value Magnus has to this academy. I also don't know what kind of position I have in your heart. Wu Yan looked straight at the dean. But to effectively value a person and talk about their value. To be honest, I want to vomit just from hearing it. Oh. The headmaster nodded without any surprise. Then, are you going to make a move on me? You must have made a mistake somewhere, right? Wu Yan smirked. What do you mean by making a move on me? Then, let me change the question. The dean narrowed his eyes. Wu Yan, you are indeed strong. You are stronger than those who dominated the night gathering and became the demon king. But do you think you can kill me? I don't think you understand. The dean said as if he was teaching a student. The puppeteers in the academy can become the demon king because they dominated the night gathering. I am known as the strongest magician of the 19th century. Do you know what that means? Because you dominated the 19th century. You are a monster more terrifying than the Demon King, right? Wu Yan sneered. Then, let me ask you a question. Do you think you can make me back down like this? Is that so? The headmaster closed his eyes. That's a pity. As soon as he said that, he extended a finger and swiped it in the void before him. Magical flames ignited from the tip of the dean's finger. As the dean's finger moved, traces of light ribbons were formed in the void in front of him. They remained in the void and gradually formed a geometric pattern. It was a magical formation with complicated runes and a hexagonal pattern with small patterns around it. The moment the magic array took shape, a very simple book appeared in the center of the magic array. Its surface was flickering with flowing light. It was a very simple and unadorned book. That's... Natsuki frowned when she saw the book in the center of the magical formation. A grimoire? Its name is Solomon's Key. The dean stretched out a hand and held up the ancient book as he spoke proudly. This is a grimoire created by a great magician who sealed his entire life's collection into it. Moreover, it is a grimoire that has never existed before. A grimoire from the past? Wu Yan, Ikaros, Astria, Agarola, Canon, and the others flinched when they heard this. Only Na Yu frowned for a moment before she suddenly spoke. Could it be that a magician from the future used a large-scale magic ritual to turn back time and send a grimoire from the future to this era? I didn't expect an automaton like you to have such a keen knowledge of magic. The dean looked at Natsuki with a surprised expression before he smiled. That's right, Solomon's Key is a grimoire sent from the future to this era. It's an automaton's summoning catalog. A catalog? That's right, it's a catalog of automaton from the future. The dean raised the grimoire in his hand. Although many of the treasures in the Key of Solomon have been lost and plundered over a long period of time, I can still control more than 50 treasures from the future to attack you. The grimoire named Solomon's Key floated up and opened on its own. A faint phosphorescent light shone from the pages and illuminated the dean's face. Now, let me show you the one I use the most frequently. After saying that, a wave of magic power gushed out from the dean's body and flooded the entire space. Chapter 1686. Many thanks to Dream Demon and Thunder for their tips. Mana that was as thick as a tidal wave spread out in all directions. It was like a tidal wave that instantly filled every corner of this space. Look at the latest. The headmaster stood in the middle of the sea of magic. His tall and sturdy, dark body was emitting a steady stream of magic that made people's expressions change. This kind of magical power was already stronger than any puppeteer or magician. Amidst this magical power, the Solomon's Key floating above the dean's palm shone brightly. It was as if a pillar of light had risen and enveloped the dean. Soon after, a dreamlike scene that made it hard for people to tell if it was real or not quietly appeared in this sea of mana. Behind the dean, who was enveloped in a pillar of light, a dazzling staircase that seemed to be made of pearls slowly appeared. The staircase had a beautiful shape and looked like it was made of pearls. With the pillar of light enveloping the principal as the source, the staircase continued to extend upwards, and a pure white wall appeared along with the staircase. On the stairs, a red carpet was also laid out. In the pure white hall that looked like a palace, it gradually extended to a place higher than the ceiling. Not long after, the staircase extended to the end and connected with a platform that appeared out of thin air. At the top of the stairs, on a platform that appeared out of thin air, a luxurious throne decorated with gold and silver stood in the middle of the platform. Wu Yan, Natsuki, Ikaros, Astria, Agarola, Canon, and the others can clearly see what's going on. On the throne, there was a beautiful girl sitting upright. Full breasts. Her skin was fair, and her waist was shockingly slender. Her beautiful face was absolutely neat, and a pair of eyes that seemed to despise everything was dotted on it. Her body was wrapped in a gorgeous dress that seemed to be made of thin white silk, and her hands and feet were decorated with countless golden rings. Ikaros, Astrea, Agarola, and Canon stared at the beautiful girl sitting on the throne at the top of the stairs and mumbled to each other. Queen. Queen. No. Wu Yan and Natsuki's expression turned serious. That's the automaton. And BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, yes. The queen sitting on the throne on the platform at the top of the stairs was an automaton. It was stored in the Key of Solomon and was sent to this era from the future. It might be widely known. It was an automaton, that had countless puzzles. Wu Yan and Natsuki could sense something from this automaton that other automatons don't have. And BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, breath. Moreover, it was a very powerful aura. It proves that the automaton sitting on the throne at the top of the staircase isn't something to be trifled with. And BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, maybe. This was the level of the automaton, It was one of the snowflake moon, which had the highest level of automaton, at the moment. Even more advanced than the Ye of the moon doll. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, the queen, who was sitting on the throne at the top of the stairs, slowly stood up, as if she was a king on an inspection tour. He walked down the stairs leisurely. As the automaton walked, every step it stepped on would turn into golden particles and dissipate when it lifted its foot. When the automaton descended to a certain distance, the dean retreated to the side and bowed respectfully like a loyal subject welcoming the king he swore allegiance to. Welcome, Your Excellency. Queen Ishtar. The queen named Ishtar walked to the ground, and the stairs, palace, platform, and throne behind her disappeared like a mirage in an instant. It wasn't until she reached the ground that Ishtar began to look at everything in her field of vision. She glanced at the dean who bowed to her. Long time no see, Ed. How long has it been since you last summoned me? Yes. It has indeed been a long time. The dean said respectfully as if he was talking to a friend or someone he swore loyalty to. There's nothing I can do about it. There aren't many existences in this world who can make me summon Queen Ishtar for help. That's right, there aren't many existences in this world who can make me summon Queen Ishtar, indeed. Ishtar nodded in satisfaction. He seemed to be enjoying the compliment very much and asked, You're right, then did you summon me this time because an opponent strong enough for me to make a move has appeared? Without waiting for the dean's reply, Ishtar raised her eyes and looked ahead. She frowned when she saw Wu Yan and the others. Isn't this still a ghost? Hearing Ishtar's disdainful words, Wu Yan's eyes turned cold. Along with the sound of the air shaking, a violent mana outage erupted from Wu Yan's body. It turned into a storm that swept across the land and kicked up a large amount of sand. The ground cracked under the weight of the mana outage. Pieces of gravel burst out from the ground like broken glass. Under the attack of the mana outage, the gravel turned into deadly bullets and shot out in all directions. Bam! 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 The rubble that had turned into bullets raged on. Everywhere it passed, a hole was blown out in the wall that blocked the way. The trees were directly cut open and exploded at the waist, smashing heavily on the ground. Seeing this, both the dean and Ishtar narrowed their eyes in shock. This level of magical power is comparable to that of a demon god. Ishtar finally took Wu Yan seriously. Looks like I've made the mistake of underestimating the enemy that I shouldn't have. It's not just Her Highness. The dean smiled bitterly. Originally, I thought that I had already overestimated him, but in the end, he gave me another surprise. I also underestimated him. Let me acknowledge you for now. Ishtar said, obviously directed at Wu Yan. Ishtar then stretched out his fair arm gracefully. You are qualified to make me use the army that I am so proud of. Army? Wu Yan and the other girls didn't know what's going on. The dean respectfully reached out his hand and held Ishtar's outstretched hand. His magical power surged from his overlapping hands and was injected into Ishtar's body. With the replenishment of his magic, Ishtar looked forward in a dignified and graceful manner. Then, he raised his free hand slightly in front of him. Hum. The next moment, from Ishtar's outstretched hand, a black shadow swept out like overflowing water, or like a mist that appeared out of thin air. Wu Yan, Natsuki, and Ikaros were shocked when they saw the black shadow bursting out of Ishtar's hand. Astria, Agurora, and Shane's expression changed. They almost screamed out loud. This was because the front end of the shadow that burst forth from Ishtar's hand was decorated with the face of a man in agony, as if something had been carved into it. It was just like a vengeful spirit in the legends. And BP, and BP, and BP, and BP, and BP. The vengeful spirit seemed to be making some kind of hissing sound. Its face was filled with pain and it opened and closed its mouth ferociously. Shortly after, the vengeful spirits rushed out of Ishtar's hand at an astonishing speed. They looked like meteors with black mist as they swarmed towards Wu Yan. Looking at the swarm of vengeful spirits, whether it was Wu Yan or the girls, they all felt a sense of danger. Their intuition told them that these things that made them uncomfortable must not be touched. Even though they didn't know what the consequences would be, they knew that touching them would definitely not feel good. Wu Yan was the first one to trust his intuition. He poured all of his mana into Ikaros' body. Ikaros. Ikaros' eyes quickly turned crimson red and an illusory frame appeared in front of her. A cold voice sounded and in the next second, a translucent crystal barrier appeared out of thin air and protected Wu Yan and the girls behind it. Asterisk boom. Asterisk asterisk boom. Asterisk almost at the same time, the vengeful spirits that were swarming at an astonishing speed suddenly crashed into the GG absolute defense circle, stirring up a storm of impact and black fog. Chapter 1687. Boom. Amidst the sound of the collision, the group of wraiths that rushed over violently undulated like waves crashing on a reef. Black mist splashed up and instantly covered the surface of the Aegis. 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 Chi. Not long after, the surface of the Aegis, that was touched by the group of wraiths actually collapsed like glue that was being burned. Seeing this scene, Wu Yan and the group of young girls trembled and stood up in surprise. Ikaros' Aegis was corroded? No. It wasn't corroded. Instead, it was being corroded and devoured by something. However, other than corrosion, there was no other way to describe the signs before him. Ikaros' Aegis was like a piece of rotten meat. It loosely collapsed and melted down before being swallowed by the wraiths. This was not something that could be done easily. It's not that easy to take down Ikaros' Aegis. Even with her power restricted, Ikaros' Aegis could easily block a nuclear bomb. At least, ever since she came to this world, Ikaros' Aegis had never been broken through properly. The reason why Charlotte was able to break through Ikaros' Aegis was because it contained the universal truth. In theory, the demonic sword that could destroy all matter had wiped out the existence of the Aegis, but it did not count as destroying the Aegis. The only reason Magnus was able to break Ikaros' Aegis was because the Jade Worm has a magic circuit that absorbs all the mana needed to support the Aegis, causing the Aegis to disappear. Both times, the two people who broke through Ikaros' Aegis didn't rely on attacks that exceeded the defensive power of the Aegis to break through the Aegis. And now, Ishtar's wraiths are using the same method to corrode Ikaros' Aegis. That's why. The wraiths. They definitely didn't just have the ability to corrode. If they only had the ability to corrode, there's no way they could melt the Aegis in less than 2 seconds. Therefore, it was good for Astria to witness the might of the wraiths. Agrora. She couldn't stop her face from trembling. Wu Yan, Natsuki, and Ikaros also showed a troubled expression. Only Canon looked at the wraiths like they were something she hated. For the first time, she showed a look of disgust. However, Canon wasn't afraid of the wraiths at all. That's only natural. Canon's power of purification is the bane of all evil. As long as Canon uses her hidden power of purification, these wraiths will be wiped out in an instant. Natsuki seemed to have thought of this too. She turned to Wu Yan for Wu Yan's opinion. Wu Yan hesitated for a bit before he lowered his voice and told Natsuki. Let's observe the situation first. Natsuki nodded in agreement. Bang! At the same time, Ikaro's aegis finally melted to the point where it couldn't hold on any longer. It shattered with a crisp sound. However, before that, Natsuki had also used spatial teleportation magic to teleport all of them away. Bang! The next moment, the creepy vengeful spirits flooded the area where Wu Yan and Co were standing like a putrid swamp. TSK. In an instant, the ground was corroded, forming a large hole with a diameter of about 5 meters. There was even a trace of black fog coming out of the hole, causing the sand and dust that came into contact with it to be extinguished in the air. Yua. With Natsuki's teleportation, the group appeared in an empty space not far away. The moment they appeared, Astria shrieked and jumped up as if she was bitten. Before Natsuki used her spatial magic, a wraith brushed past Astria's pure white wings. Astria's pure white wings started to burn as if they were being burned by an invisible fire. The feathers on them started to rot and turn into ashes that floated down to the ground. Not only that, the corrosion spread to Astria's wings at a speed visible to the naked eye. Master! Master! Astria screamed in panic. Wu Yan placed his hand on Canon's shoulder and channeled his mana into her body. Canon. Yes. Canon raised her hand. With a buzzing sound, a holy light shone from her hand and enveloped Astria's corroding wings. Under the effect of the holy light, the corrosive effect on Astria's wings gradually slowed down until it disappeared completely. Astria's burnt wings returned to their original state in the blink of an eye as if nothing happened. Ishtar was shocked when he saw the damage caused by his vengeful spirits vanish just like that. The dean pondered for a moment and nodded. I almost forgot that the silver-haired automaton has excellent healing magic. Healing? Ishtar narrowed his eyes and sneered. Then I shall devour all of you in an instant. Ishtar raised his hand again and a horde of grudgeful wraiths rushed out of his palm. The grudgeful wraiths pounced on Wu Yan and Co with a dark mist and a hideous expression on their faces. Wu Yan closed his eyes when he saw the horde of wraiths rushing towards him. Taking a deep breath, Wu Yan slowly revealed his wine-red eyes. His eyes flashed with a ferocious glint. A violent whirlwind of mana burst out from his body. Wu Yan leaped and stood in front of the girls. This time, even Ishtar himself was stunned. Not to mention Ishtar, even the dean was stunned on the spot. Not only did the other party not use the defensive barrier to block the attack, but he actually took the initiative to step forward. Could it be that he wanted to end his own life? Wu Yan immediately informed the dean and Ishtar that he was trying to end his own life. Whoosh! With a whistling sound, the mana that rushed out of Wu Yan's body turned into a substantial airflow that hovered in the air. Then, the airflow turned into a black mist. As if it had a mind of its own, it spun wildly and protected Wu Yan's group like a protective barrier. Boom! The wraiths crashed into the black mist of mana. Black sparks erupted from the mist like volcanic ash. However, a scene that surprised both the dean and Ishtar appeared. Boom! The group of vengeful spirits that had hit the pitch-black mist of mana were all bounced away by the rotating mist of mana. Now! Wu Yan yelled from within the mist of mana. Ikaros! Ikaros spread her arms and the aegis, absolute defense circle, rippled. But this time, the aegis, absolute defense circle, didn't appear around Wu Yan's group. Instead, it appeared around the dean and Ishtar like a cage, trapping them inside. At the same time, Natsuki raised the lace fan in her hand and waved it in the direction of the dean. On the surface of the aegis, absolute defense circle, spatial ripples appeared one by one and the chains of discipline lashed at the dean like whips. Ishtar snorted. He raised his hand and was about to use his wraiths to corrode the chains of discipline. But at this moment, an icy white mist filled the air. Chapter 1688. Whoosh. Amidst the whistling sound, the freezing white mist permeated the interior of the Aegis and instantly filled the entire space of the Aegis. Instantly, the temperature inside the Aegis dropped at a terrifying speed. In just a few seconds, the temperature had dropped below 0 degrees Celsius. Originally, with Agrora's current strength, there was no way for the temperature to drop so quickly. However, Ikaros had created an absolutely sealed environment, allowing Agrora's cold air to spread rapidly, causing the temperature inside the Aegis to drop abnormally fast. Kacha kacha. Before the president and Ishtar could react, the cold mist had filled the interior of the Aegis, causing a layer of ice to condense on the surface of the Aegis. In the blink of an eye, the ground was covered with hard ice. A layer of ice formed on Ishtar's hand that he extended towards the incoming lock of discipline. Even the dean himself and Ishtar's body were covered in a layer of ice. TSK. Ishtar's elegant and dignified posture was finally replaced by a trace of panic. The president knitted his brows tightly. Both of them hurriedly mobilized their magical power and used pure magical power to disperse the ice around them and expel the surrounding cold air. Whoosh. However, while the president and Ishtar were shaking off the ice shards on their bodies and dispelling the cold air around them, the lock of discipline whizzed through the interior of the Aegis and wrapped around the president and Ishtar's limbs. The president's frown deepened. A majestic magical power surged from the 4 limbs that were bound by the lock of discipline, attempting to shatter the lock of discipline on their bodies. However, the president soon discovered it. The magical power in his body could still be mobilized on its own. However, there was no way for it to escape from his body. The reason was simple. The surface of the lock of discipline, that was glowing with a purple light, was flowing with another type of magical power, isolating the magical power that was trying to escape from the president's body. Damn it. Ishtar also discovered this and was a little annoyed. What a pointless action. My army is created in my body. Even if I can't let the magical power out of my body, it doesn't matter. As soon as he finished speaking, Ishtar's palm turned into a ghastly wraith. Ugly vengeful spirits were spat out one after another, their ferocious faces covering the lock of discipline that bound the principal and Ishtar. Under the effect of the vengeful spirit's corrosion, the purplish glow flowing on the surface of the lock of discipline, which was said to be forged by the gods, quickly dimmed. Even the lock of discipline itself was corroded and full of holes. I'm afraid. Not long after, the lock of discipline would be completely corroded. However, just as the wraiths were about to corrode the lock of discipline on the president and Ishtar, a strong sense of danger rose in their hearts. Following this sense of danger, the president and Ishtar shifted their attention to the front almost at the same time. It was on the Aegis, absolute defense circle, that had a layer of ice on its surface. Then, the president and Ishtar discovered it. On the Aegis, absolute defense circle, that stood around like a cage with a layer of ice on its surface, there was a hole in a place without them noticing. Their line of sight passed through the hole. Staring at the outside of the Aegis, absolute defense circle, what the president and Ishtar saw was a figure. It was a pitch-black figure dressed in black clothes. A pair of wine-red eyes that were as calm as an ancient well was looking straight at them. The figure was outside the Aegis, absolute defense circle. In his hand was a gorgeous black bow that looked like it was made of black crystal. He pulled the bowstring and condensed an arrow that looked like a meteor, aiming at the 2 figures. For the first time, the most powerful magician of the 19th century and the legendary automaton sent from the future to this era changed their expressions at the same time. Looking at the sudden change of expression on the president's and Ishtar's faces, Wu Yan, who was standing outside the Aegis, absolute defense circle, had a flash of coldness in his wine-red eyes. Then, without hesitation, Wu Yan released the bowstring of the meteor shower in his hand. Whoosh! Like a meteor appearing in the night sky, the meteor shower arrow bloomed in the air with a long tail of light. It flashed and shot into the only exposed hole in the Aegis, absolute defense circle, and burst into the Aegis, absolute defense circle. When the meteor shower arrow shot into the Aegis, absolute defense circle, the only exposed hole on the surface of the Aegis, absolute defense circle, quickly healed and was sealed again. Then, an intense and dazzling light flashed in the Aegis, absolute defense circle. Bam! Inside the Aegis, absolute defense circle, which was filled with white cold mist and chains that shuttled back and forth. The surface was covered with a layer of ice, and the ground inside was covered with hard ice. An earth-shattering explosion sounded like a clap of thunder in the vast sky above the Aegis, absolute defense circle. A violent gust of wind carried with it a blazing heat, like a storm, crazily attacking the Aegis, absolute defense circle. Inside, the white cold mist was almost instantly dispersed, and the ground that was covered with hard ice cracked immediately. Cracks as thick as an arm spread out like a spider web. The cracks spread across the entire Aegis, absolute defense circle. Even the ground outside the Aegis, absolute defense circle, started to crack inch by inch. The seemingly sturdy Aegis, absolute defense circle, also started to crack like glass in a short period of time. One can imagine that without the Aegis, absolute defense circle, the meteor shower would have mercilessly destroyed everything around it. At that time, not far away, the dean's mansion would not be able to escape the fate of being destroyed. Those guards who had been frozen into ice by Aurora would also not be able to escape death. Astrea asked nervously as she looked at the apocalyptic scene inside the Aegis, absolute defense circle. Is it defeated? No one answered Astrea's question. It should be said that no one had the energy to answer Astrea's question. Wu Yan, Natsuki, Ikaros, Aurora, Canon, and the others stared at the Aegis, absolute defense circle, that was gradually cracking. After an unknown amount of time, the heat wave inside the Aegis, absolute defense circle, slowly dissipated, revealing the situation inside. The two figures inside were also exposed to the air. A man and a woman stood in the middle of the cracked ground. Their clothes were slightly disheveled, it looked like they just ran around in the middle of the storm. However, there wasn't a single wound on the man and woman's bodies. That attack just now only brought a slight threat to them, it didn't do any damage at all. I knew it. Wu Yan's face darkened. It's not that simple. You should feel honored, little. Ishtar looked at Wu Yan coldly. In order to escape from the situation just now, I summoned my second army. Second army? Wu Yan and the rest of the girls were stunned. Could it be that Ishtar doesn't only have those vengeful spirits that can corrode his body? You keep on giving me surprises. To be able to force Queen Ishtar to summon her second army, your performance has truly surprised me. The dean looked at Wu Yan and sighed. Magnus is a genius who has broken the records of the academy. He's the first in all of history. Although I've always said that you're a treasure like Magnus, I've never been willing to admit it in my heart. To think that there would be a second genius like Magnus, the dean let go of Ishtar's hand and retracted his mana. He looked at Wu Yan with a smile. I think we should have a chat. Chapter 1689. I think it's time for us to have a chat. Everyone had different reactions when they saw the dean retracting his mana and saying those words with a smile. Ishtar, who couldn't get a supply of magic power, couldn't fight even if he wanted to. His face was full of dissatisfaction, but he didn't object. Ikaros, Astrea, Aurora, and Canon looked at each other in confusion. Natsuki's beautiful brows were tightly knitted together. Her beautiful eyes were filled with thoughts, as if she was trying to figure out the dean's intentions. Wu Yan narrowed his eyes and spoke. Your so-called chat, don't tell me you're trying to tell me that you've long known that I was being used by someone else, and that's why you came to assassinate me? As soon as he said that, not only the dean, but all the girls including Ishtar were stunned. What is the meaning of this? The dean didn't expect Wu Yan to give such an answer to his question. A surprised expression appeared on his face, but the smile on his face disappeared. Anyone who was familiar with the dean would know that the dean would only react this way when a certain step of his plan was disrupted. Wu Yan messed up the dean's plan. However, Wu Yan didn't hold back at all. He showed a mocking smile to the dean who, from a certain aspect, controlled the treatment he would receive in this world. I say, Dean, don't tell me you think I don't know anything? His words were so confusing that the young ladies were even more confused. At the same time, the dean's expression also became more and more solemn. The dean's gaze sharpened as he stared at Wu Yan. Looks like I didn't just look down on your strength. Letting out a light sigh, the dean once again piled up a smile on his tanned face. You're right. Wu Yan. I already knew that you were being used by someone to kill me. What do you mean? This time, Natsuki, who was frowning, couldn't help but speak up. You said you knew we were being used by someone to kill you? Then why don't you find out who's behind this and treat us like criminals instead? Natsuki was right. If the dean already knew that Wu Yan and co were being used by someone else to kill him, then that's even more reason for him to do so. He should have found the mastermind who wanted to take his life. Instead of not even saying a single word, he should have faced Wu Yan head-on. Because that was meaningless, wasn't it? Even if the mastermind was subdued, the mastermind was still alive. The dean's life couldn't be guaranteed. Moreover, if he really knew the inside story, the dean wouldn't just stay silent and fight with a person who was being used. At the very least, he should tell Wu Yan that he knows the inside story and try to get information out of Wu Yan's mouth about the mastermind behind all of this. However, not only did the dean not do so, he only advised Wu Yan a bit before treating him like an actual assassin and engaging him in battle. It didn't make sense. Well, let's talk about one problem at a time. The dean was like an amiable old man. He squinted his eyes and showed a peaceful expression. First, Wu Yan, you should know who is the one who wants to take my life, right? The Kingsford family. Wu Yan glanced at the dean. To be precise, it's the Kingsford family and the Granville family who wants to help the Kingsford family, right? The Kingsford family and the Granville family used to be political enemies, but there's no such thing as eternal enemies in the eyes of the major powers. Now, the two families have formed an alliance because of some benefits. The dean sighed and shook his head. That's why the Granville family wants to help the Kingsford family. In order for the Kingsford family to return to the political arena, they plan to kill me who caused the Kingsford family's downfall and sentenced Felix to death. But, Wu Yan-san, I wonder if you're aware of something like this as well? The headmaster asked in a probing manner. Actually, recently, the Kingsford family has sent a secret envoy to contact me in private. A secret messenger from the Kingsford family? It wasn't Wu Yan who was confused. It was Natsuki. However, Natsuki quickly thought of something and sneered. I see. They plan to use soft tactics to bribe you before they use hard tactics. If they can bribe me and let me fabricate some fake evidence to announce the fact that Felix was wrongly accused, wouldn't that solve the problem? The dean acknowledged Natsuki's words and shrugged his shoulders. The Granville family knows nothing about this. So, regardless of whether the assassination plan succeeds or fails, the Granville family can be blamed for it? Na Yu spoke with disgust from the bottom of her heart. She then looked at the headmaster. Then, did you know that we were used to kill you because the Kingsford family bribed you? Did you learn the whole story from them? Exactly. It's the exact opposite. The dean denied this statement with a calm tone. The Granville family will send people to kill me. The Kingsford family will try to bribe me through conciliation. Actually, it's just a part of my plan. I knew it would end up like this. Hearing this, Natsuki and the girls couldn't help but be shocked. Plan? What plan? As expected. Wu Yan sighed when everyone was still in a daze. He enunciated each and every word clearly. You're the one who ordered the Granville family to send me to kill you, aren't you? The girls' hearts skipped a beat. The dean ordered the Granville family to send Wu Yan to kill him? As expected, you've already found out. The dean exclaimed in admiration. To be precise, I asked the Granville family to send someone to kill me, but I didn't specify you. The girls understood the situation even if they were slow. Behind the whole thing, there was an unimaginable inside story. What's the purpose? Natsuki was the first to calm down. What's the purpose of this? Hey, Wu Yan. The dean didn't answer Natsuki's question. Instead, he looked at Wu Yan with a smile. Do you know what a divine ingenuity is? Divine ingenuity? Natsuki's group of girls began to ponder over this phrase. A fully self-disciplined automaton. Wu Yan raised his head and said. It's a fully autonomous automaton that can generate magic power on its own, activate magic circuits on its own, and fight on its own, even without the puppeteer's control and supply of magic power. A fully self-disciplined automaton? The girls cried out in surprise. It was common knowledge that automatons were inseparable from mana and puppeteers. Once they were separated from their puppeteers and mana, the automaton was just a pile of scrap metal that couldn't perform any functions. It was the same even for a forbidden doll. After all, the amount of mana a forbidden doll could generate was too little. It wasn't enough for them to fight on their own. Therefore, without a puppeteer, a forbidden doll was just a toy that wasn't made of scrap metal. However, if an automaton could provide mana on its own like a human, it wouldn't be a problem if it didn't have a puppeteer. Therefore, there was the saying of a fully autonomous automaton. Countries all over the world were also doing research on this point. Unfortunately, until now, no country had ever developed a fully autonomous automaton. As for the fully self-disciplined automaton, its name was Divine Ingenuity. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.